said, you're halfway to the weekend. Just hang in there. We're going to get you all the way to go home time on a Friday afternoon. In the meantime, pushing buttons so ably on the board, JP, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm good.
Hump day.
Hump day.
As I get older, I can feel that hump. Let me just say, when I was a kid, I was like, "What's the big deal? It's Wednesday." It's like, okay, we get some momentum going.
Now you're like staring ahead. It's Friday coming. It's all good. Yeah, we got a great show laid on for you today. Coming up at the beginning of hour number 3, as always, on the day you hear from the camel at the beginning, you hear from 2 other guys along with me at the beginning of hour 3. So, yep, the Grand Council. Today, we got a proxy in for Dale Jackson, who's out of town. So, Jeff Poore and Scott Buttram doing the Grand Council with me at the beginning of hour number 3. Always a good crew. You'll enjoy that. Stand by for that. And then there's still a triple dipper full of stuff. So, hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right. The Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, law and order. Law and order. You know, it's every once in a while a topic comes along that gets 2 dippers in 1 week, and here's one of them. What Trump is doing in Washington, D.C. has the complete, meltdown going of the Democrats. They are beside themselves. They are apoplectic. They cannot figure out how in the world. The reality is it's their policies that got us here. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about law and order and what's happening up yonder in D.C. Number 2, you know the deal. Every once in a while, I'm looking around. I find all kinds of news stories. I think that's important. Oh, that's important. And they're all in our backyard. That means it's time for me to cook up a batch of home fries. So yes, indeed, we'll do a batch of home fries and tell you what's happening in and around and amongst us, because sometimes what happens here close to home is even more important than what happens somewhere else. And then the last one, number 3, assuming we can get to it, the war on woke. Listen, it's amazing. The left does not know what to do. I mean, how dare the president say we cannot have revisionist history in our museums? What? I mean, They are absolutely of the mind that what he's trying to do is, in the words of Senator Chris Coons, who I'll play you a clip from later, is whitewashing history. Come on. No. We're pushing back on wokeness is what we're doing. So it's the war on woke. That's number 3 on the Triple Dipper. Stand by for that. All right, let me jump on into today's Rightside Way opening monologue. I'll just remind you guys that attorney Stan McDonald, indeed, is the daily sponsor of the Rightside Way. He's also a 30-year veteran in the practice of law and a longtime conservative. And I'll tell you more about Stan McDonald here in just a few minutes. All right, let me say this. I love stories about one person taking a stand. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm all about the team effort, about the ability of a group to band together and get great things done. But there's much to be said about the grit and determination of the one person who takes a strong stand in the face of opposition, like just even by themselves. Like a piece I ran across the other day, a story about one veteran who just wanted to fly his flag. And by the way, that was not just any veteran. That was a man by the name of Van Barfoot, a legend, who decided that the HOA for his neighborhood did not know how to find their backside with both hands. Listen, Van Barfoot, on May 23rd of 1944 in World War II, near Cyrano, Italy, that same Van Barfoot who had in 1940 enlisted in the U.S. Army, he set out alone to flank German machine gun positions from which gunfire was just raining down on his fellow soldiers. Van Barfoot. He proceeded to single-handedly take out 3 enemy machine gun positions and returned with 17 prisoners of war. And if that weren't enough for a day's work, he later took on and destroyed 3 German tanks that were sent to retake the machine gun positions that he had just cleared. That earned Van Barfoot, who retired as a colonel after also serving in Korea and Vietnam, Van Barfoot got the well-deserved Congressional Medal of Honor. But later in life, Barfoot made news again in a quiet Virginia neighborhood. His neighborhood association took issue with how the 90-year-old veteran chose to fly the American flag outside his suburban Virginia home. It seems the HOA rules said it was okay to fly a flag on a house-mounted bracket, but for decorum, items like Barfoot's 21-foot flagpole were just simply unsuitable. Well, Van Barfoot, the Congressional Medal of Honor winner, he had been denied a permit for the pole, but he put it up anyway, and he was facing court action unless he agreed to take it down. And then the HOA story made national TV. And the neighborhood association rethought its position and agreed to indulge the aging hero who dwelt among them. His words, "In the time I have left," he said to the Associated Press, "I plan to continue to fly the American flag without interference." as well he should. And oh, by the way, as well he had earned. And if any of his neighbors had taken a notion to contest him further, they might have done well to read his Medal of Honor citation first. It seems it indicates that Mr. Van Barfoot wasn't particularly good at backing down. It's a great story. And it was also a big deal, but small in comparison to the one that I'm about to tell you. Let me start by saying, or asking, what if I told you that your opinion not only did not matter, but you were prohibited from even sharing your opinion in any way, like any way at all? No Facebook posts, no town hall meetings, no letters to the editor, no calls to Rightside Radio, nothing. Your opinion was forbidden. In fact, if they wanted your opinion, they would tell you what it is first. Some of you may be thinking that you're feeling that way right now, but you're not by a long shot. In fact, your voice may be your greatest weapon. It doesn't have to mean you're always right or that your resume is the strongest or that you have some amazing pedigree or some advanced diploma from an elite university. The voice of the average citizen is still one of the greatest forces for freedom anywhere in the world, especially here where the argument exists that the freedom of speech is an actual right, not a privilege, but a right in our Constitution. So before I go any further, let me be straight up. If you're told that your opinion is out of order, unwanted, unnecessary, or that you should go sit in the corner and just be quiet, well, then you have a decision to make. Do you go away and not make a sound that can ruffle a feather or two, or do you speak up knowing that the founding fathers took this very question into consideration? They decided, the founders did, that the very first amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the very first one, should preserve the right to voice your opinion. Look, I say don't go quietly, even if it means taking a one-man stand. Now, let me also be clear on something. I kind of alluded to it yesterday. The fact that you can speak out doesn't mean that you always should. And no, I'm not crawfishing here. What I'm saying is there's a lot to be said for having the wisdom and the maturity to know when to bridle your tongue and when to just let her rip. And once you speak, you need to be able to ably defend your opinion. You need to be able to back it up. Don't go quietly, but don't go off half-cocked is what I'm saying. Now, having said all that, let me tell you an amazing story about an amazing man. His name was Watchman Nee. Watchman Nee. I don't know if you've ever heard this story before. I told it once on the air, I think a few years back. But the whole story I'm about to tell you is true. And there needs to be a feature-length movie about the life of Watchman Nee. But it bears repeating how this one man stood and he changed the lives of millions. Watchman Nee was a Chinese citizen born in 1903. This was in the pre-communist era, and Christianity was grudgingly accepted as part of society, with missionary schools being really common in certain parts of China. Watchman Nee, whose birth name was Nie To Shang, he became a Christian in 1920 when he was 17, and he immediately began making waves in Chinese society. Over time, he wrote numerous books. He helped to found a non-denominational church that focused on meetings in people's homes and small groups. The name of his church was loosely translated as the Little Flock, but it grew, and it was not really that little when you took it in its totality. At one point, it was estimated that upwards of 1 million citizens of China had adopted the Christian faith, and of those, 10% were members of Watchman Nee's Little Flock. When the Communist Party came to power in 1949, religion fell out of favor, and like many others, Watchman Nee was deemed suspect, and his opinions were just heresy. He became a target of the Chinese Party's government, and at every step, he maintained his faith, and he spoke about it openly nonetheless. In 1952, Watchman Nee was arrested and imprisoned, and over the next few years in a series of kangaroo courts, he was eventually charged and convicted with conspiring to do damage to the Communist Party, sentenced to 15 years in prison with labor for the purpose of reform and re-education. Except it didn't work. You see, Watchman Nee would not be quiet. I was told by someone that at one point, the party officials in charge of his imprisonment, they actually had to switch out guards every day because he kept leading his guards to Christ. So they would send in a new guard, and Nee would once again lead them to faith in Christ, and then he'd have to send in a new one. In 1967, Nee's sentence was due to be over, but the Communist Party refused to let him go. Without further sentencing, he was deemed to be too dangerous, so they delayed, and they delayed for 5 more years, even though he had finished his sentence. Watchman Nee finally died in prison in 1972. And you might think that sounds like a story with a sorry end to a difficult life. But his legacy, man, the legacy that came from speaking out, that legacy is said to be the root of over 10 million Chinese Christians who trace their faith back to the ministry of Watchman Nee, according to statistics compiled by the World Christian Database. Over 3,000 churches worldwide have used his teachings. He wrote 62 books. He was honored by the U.S. Congress in 2009. He was honored in March of just, I think, 2023 by the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. My point is this: if you believe in something that you've committed to with a deep sense, whether it's a matter of faith or principle or ideas or culture or whatever, it's not enough just to shout words and walk away. There's no time in a world filled with social media posts and 24/7 sound bites for people who are just so shallow in their beliefs that they can't defend them. You got to become a student of what you believe and be able to not just say it, but actually explain it. And if you're ever questioned, then be able to dialogue about it. And if you're offended, be able to counter the offense, but do so with a reasonable response. And when you're told to be quiet, you give strong consideration to speaking out anyway. Liberal arguments, they often defy reason. They defy science. They defy the idea of faith, but they will shout those arguments nonetheless, and they will shout even louder when you don't back down. But when they are truly faced with someone who has the strength of their convictions to match the statements that they're making, they often don't even know what to do. So I say gear up, study up, and speak up. Liberals are demanding that we remain silent these days. I don't intend to go quietly into the night, and you shouldn't either. You need to be like Van Barfoot and fly your flag. And never forget, there's 10 million Chinese Christians who are glad that Watchman Nee never stopped speaking up. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. There you have it. And yes, indeed, it's a true story. Look him up. Watchman Nee, spelled N-E-E. Watchman Nee, what an amazing story. I wish they would make a movie about his life. Can you imagine? One guy who spoke up, made a difference, was thrown in jail, and there are still 10 million Christians who owe their entire faith base to him. Wow. Speak up, my friends. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. This guy meets Ric Flair.
Yep.
And then now you're married into the Flair family.
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
She was Ric Flair's daughter. Now she's Conrad Thompson's wife. There you go.
Play that for his kids.
No, I'm just saying realistically, I'm not Conrad Flair, but she is Megan Thompson.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So
No,
she
that's
joined
good.
my family, and we're delighted to have her. But yeah, it's sort of a happy accident. I met Rick at an autograph event in Rome, Georgia, of all places. And that was in, I believe it was November of 2013. And sadly, he had lost his son Reed to an overdose in March of that year. So he was in a challenging headspace, but we quickly headed off, and he was looking for a friend. And respectfully, he was looking for a friend to go drinking with. And so I signed up to do it. And one of my friends said, "Hey man, how many times are you going to drink beer and watch sports with Ric Flair?" And I said, "About as often as I can, I guess. That sounds like fun to me." So that's what we did. And so we just became drinking buddies. And one day, I think we were watching the NFL draft. He said, "Hey, what's a podcast? Can you make any money with a podcast?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if you can make money with a podcast, but show me your phone. I'll show you how it works." That was 2014.
So before podcasts were even cool. Really.
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah. CBS had reached out to him and offered him a podcast. So in 2015, he launched Woo Nation on Play.it, which was a CBS platform. And he would go into the radio station on Peachtree in downtown Atlanta and record his podcast. And he got nervous 2 days beforehand. He said, "Conrad, it just feels weird, me just being alone in a room talking to a microphone.
I get that.
Will you come in to the studio and just let me, you ask me fan questions?" And I said, "Sure." So I thought, man, I don't know how many people are going to hear this, but I don't want to embarrass myself. So I did a lot of production notes, and I walked in with notes for he and I had things bolded and highlighted and all that.
Yeah.
And the people there at CBS said, "Hey, who is this guy and why is he here?" And Rick said, "Oh, he's just going to sit in this episode and ask me fan questions." But at the end, CBS said, "Can you go back next week? That was pretty good." So I became an accidental podcaster. It wasn't the plan. But about a month in, I realized, I've been spending like $100,000 a month on marketing in Nashville, Huntsville, and Chattanooga to promote my mortgage company. But people can hear this all over the world, and I'm not paying for it. I need to get licensed in more states than just Alabama and Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I need to start driving traffic that way. So I quickly did. We went from an ad budget of $100,000 a month. That was the real number for our mortgage company to $0, and it's all just through podcasts. And we experienced phenomenal growth. We had a much bigger platform because of the podcast. So anytime I get a chance to come on a show like yours, I jump at the chance. I believe in the medium, and I know that, you know, podcasting is a great way to grow small business. And I hope everyone listening to this embraces it.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I agree. And in fact, I would call myself somewhat accidental and late in life too. That point, you know, I got a call out of nowhere. Would I do a radio show? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And next thing you know, here I am, radio, podcasting, and all of it.
Yeah.
And really watching something grow. And it's like you, I'm a dual career guy. I've got a law firm, and yet I don't know which one I spend more time on, to be honest with you. In fact, I probably really do. Here I am sitting with you. But the truth of the matter is, it's a hoot, and you get to do what I call impacting culture.
Yes.
And that's where I feel like my calling is impacting culture, and having an opportunity to be a part of the mix, and to express something that other people might go, oh, that's what I've been trying to figure out the words to say, and if I can get that done in a day, I feel like I've done my gig.
Absolutely.
All right. That being said, let me ask you. So the accidental podcaster, but it didn't just stop with the one. You had Woo Nation, you and Ric Flair.
That's right.
Which is not currently going now, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, CBS closed Play.it. CBS Radio actually sold. So when they sunset that, Rick and I had already decided, hey, we can monetize this and sell this better on our end if we just take over sales and everything. At that point, we were quote unquote just talent. But I, as an entrepreneur and small business owner, I was like, I think there's more money to be made if we just control it all.
Yeah.
So I pitched him on, let's just launch our own show independently. And my buddy Dave Green, who I met because he ran the Cumulus Cluster in Huntsville, which features one of your fabulous shows on WVNN, he had moved back home to St. Louis. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, do you think you could represent me as our ad sales guy? And he said, absolutely. So we came up with, using my graphics girl, like a slate for him to pitch, and well, we could, you know, pitch some sales, and it worked. So the success of the Ric Flair show, which we launched, and somehow it debuted at #1 on the sports charts, I said, hey, you know what? This is great, but I sure would like to get some more of those leads the other.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right. Hey, I'm got to tell you real quick about attorney Stan McDonald. Yes, I do. Attorney Stan McDonald. He's a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee up yonder in Huntsville. Listen, he's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law. He's also a longtime conservative, good lawyer, and great conservative, too. I can just tell you right now, Stan McDonald's been in the mix, in the fray, in the trenches on all the things that right-side ruffians care about over the years. So, yeah, Stan McDonald, by the way, as an attorney, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He can stand up for you in any local, state, or federal court. I like to say, and I always do, if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. I mean, think about that. So, yeah, attorney Stan McDonald, law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. I'm going to tell you how to reach him. It's a phone number. Are you ready? Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. And tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. And no representation is made that Stan would ever do you wrong. I like Stan McDonald. All right. So, yeah. Check that out. Listen, we got text lines already open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text or call it, same number for both. Don't forget Grand Council's coming up. I was just told, I did not know, Scott Buttram will be in studio with us. That's awesome. I mean, Scotty Buttram is always a hoot when he comes in. It's even more fun when he's here in the studio, I think. We bounce off each other a lot. Let me grab a few things here real quick. David from Huntsville on the monologue just said, just wow. Thank you. You are welcome, my friend. John from Huntsville says, Phil, spectacular monologue. Thank you. He says, definitely one of your best. Thank you. He said, also, did you hear Trump promises severe consequences if Putin doesn't agree to end the war? I did hear that. By the way, JP, I hope you didn't watch your Braves lose last night 13-5. 13-5? Good Lord.
I don't I don't watch anymore. I just see the score updates and then wait for next year.
Are the Braves showing up for the game?
They've thrown in the towel completely. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's like
Also, apparently the manager's going to retire after this year, so that's coming up.
and
So
if he makes it to the end of the year,
yeah, he will. He'll retire on his own accord. He won a ring. He gets to do whatever he wants. But I think it's pretty obvious the Braves have just completely next year.
wow, what a waste. Okay. Thomas from Athens says, 2 amazing men you have shared briefly with us. It brings to fruition the well-considered strategy of, quote, being a change agent in your networks of people. I myself started small with my truths, but it has gotten easier and more joyful to keep going and keep growing and sharing with my other truths, sharing with others my truths. Thank you, Thomas, and I appreciate you, man, very much. Jerry from Decatur says, amen on your monologue, Phil. The wrong side has always been at war against the truth. The truth must always have freedom, even if lied against. It's up to the individual to discern between truth and falsehood and stand. Airborne. Airborne, Jerry. Appreciate you, man. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to dive into Law and Order here in a few minutes. And I'll tell you what's really interesting is the extent right now to which the left is having a complete meltdown over Trump calling out federal law enforcement and National Guard to provide a surge to Washington, D.C. I mean, y'all, you would think that somehow or another he has declared martial law. He hasn't. You would think that somehow or another he is demanding a shutdown of all businesses and an isolation, of the personnel in their homes. He hasn't. I mean, he's not closing down schools. He's not doing anything draconian, nothing like what they did to us during COVID. He's literally just putting more law enforcement on the streets and arresting bad guys. That's it. That's it. And he put Janine Pirro in as U.S. attorney, and she's wearing him out too. That's pretty fun, actually.
And if if the DC police chief doesn't even know what a chain of command means, then I think maybe they need somebody else like Pam Bondi or somebody else from the DOJ in charge.
Yeah,
that blew my mind.
I watched that video and I'm trying to think. There's just no good way to spin that.
No, I mean, her response was, What exactly do you mean? Like, actually made it look like she knows what the term chain of command means, but she looked at him blankly, like there's nothing going on up here, and goes, what does that mean?
She was out. She was clueless. She was done. What's the chain of command? What does that mean? And then immediately the mayor steps in and takes the microphone. It wasn't like the mayor saw it and like, oh God.
Oh no.
All right, we're going to come back. Law and Order, Dipper number 1. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. We will be right back.
Days of the work week, because I had been used to advertising my mortgage company through the radio Monday through Friday with live ads, because I would call into the station and say what's going on and tell today's success story or what have you. So I thought I need to build more shows. So I had, through a different project, I was doing some recruiting in Nashville, and I wanted to shoot a campaign targeting guys who had worked in the auto finance industry. They understand sales, they understand interfacing with customers, and they understand finance. So I thought these guys are natural to do it in the mortgage business, but a much better quality of life. Anybody who's worked in the car business can tell you it's just a grueling grind of a schedule. So to be able to get back more of that time and perhaps earn more money, I thought, hey, this is a home run. So I reached out to a former WWE producer who had produced a bunch of their stuff through the years for guys like The Rock or Stone Cold or The Undertaker. And I said, help me come up with a compelling commercial. So we worked on it for the better part of a week. And near the end of one of our shooting days, we're just collapsing on my couch at the house like, whew, what a long day. And as we're just shooting the breeze, I said, hey, man, what happened when? And I asked a very specific wrestling question. And he adjusted in his seat, and we talked about it, and he told me the story. His name is Bruce Pritchard.
Okay.
And at the time, he had worked at a Volvo dealership, and then after that, he had worked managing a law firm for a great close personal friend of his named Rob Taylor in Houston, who was really an icon in the mesothelioma and asbestos and all that sort of stuff back in the day. Anyway, I'm saying all that to say he thought he was completely done with wrestling, and wrestling was done with him. But what I heard that day, I was convinced at the end of that conversation. I said, Bruce, we should do a podcast.
You heard the institutional knowledge.
And he said, well, who wants to hear me talk? And I go, dude, every wrestling fan would be riveted by what you just said. The only trouble is we didn't record it. But if we would have recorded that and posted it, it would be the most viral wrestling podcast there is. Well, eventually I convince him to let's just record a few for
Okay,
fun.
how long was the eventually? How long did it take?
Maybe 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, because he had just the way it actually happened is he had just launched a t-shirt store on prowrestlingtees.com. So the idea would be if you were no longer contracted by WWE, but you still had a little bit of name recognition, think like $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. Yeah. Then they were selling shirts that looked like the $1 Million Man's jacket. It's just a black t-shirt, but it looks like it. So it's just a fun, if you get it, it's retro wrestling, you get it. Well, he had some for his Brother Love character that he portrayed in 1988. And I said, here's the thing. I can sell some mortgages. You can sell some t-shirts. What's the downside? So we started doing the show, and before we knew it, we were getting hundreds of thousands of listens on every episode.
How cool is that?
And what's interesting is the day that show debuted, and that's really the one that put us on the map, and we won Sports Illustrated's Podcast of the Year and all that other stuff. That show debuted on the very same day I had my first date with my now wife.
No
so
kidding.
It's a pretty important day in the history of my life.
Remember the date?
August 3rd.
Okay.
August 3rd.
Don't go down that road and not name
That's
the date.
right. That's right. That's right.
Well, that's very cool. And so how long did that one run?
It's still going now.
Oh, that's the one that's still going.
What's interesting is we started in 2016, in August of 2016, and by February of 2019, Vince McMahon had called and hired him back to work in creative. And as we're talking now, he's the executive vice president and creative director of WWE. So depending on who you ask, he's one of the most 5 or 6 most influential people in wrestling. But it was our podcast that sort of was the foray in him getting back into it. So with the success of the Bruce Show, I said, hey, that was the WWF side of things. What if we did one for their biggest competitor, WCW? And I reached out to Tony Schiavone, who was on TBS from 1983 until 2001. Yeah. But then he left and started calling minor league baseball. And when I met him, he actually was working at Starbucks because his family needed insurance. And I said, hey, man, here's what I did with Bruce. I think, we could make some money here and raise the profile for you if you were interested. And the timing was perfect because he had just found out his daughter was getting married. He had a new wedding bill coming, and he's like, hey, let's do it. So we made a gentleman's agreement. I'll sell some mortgages, and I'll let you keep all the ad revenue until we get this wedding paid for. Well, when it was done, we just kind of assumed, well, is that the end of the podcast? And we did a podcast from the wedding reception where we announced, no.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This show. I mean, like it goes from like Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains that we call Auburn, straight across the line from there to what we now call, once again, Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. And oh, by the way, that's just the radio. And then there's all y'all out there in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web, streaming the show live daily, looking inside the studio even as we speak. Places like X and YouTube and Rumble and our Facebook page. And oh, by the way, our website, rightsidemedia.org. And then all you podcasters, guys who catch it after the fact. We appreciate you. Listen, every single one of you, no matter how you get this show. I try to say it at least 2 or 3 times a show that we see you're out there wherever you pick us up. Thank you. You're the reason why we do what we do, and it wouldn't work without you. One other text real quick before I jump into the topic. Darla from Athens says, awesome monologue, Phil. It really hit home for me. Thank you, Darla from Athens. Darla, thank you. Also, JP just read me a message that somebody sent regarding last week's monologue that just like blew me away. And I thank you for that. So anyway, all said and done, you guys, I'm serious. You're the reason why we do what we do. All right, let's talk about some law and order. Let's talk about some Democrat come apart. Let's talk about some Democrats who don't know which way is up right now, because every time they turn around, they think they got something going on and Trump does something. They're literally like a clown show right now. In my opinion, the Democrats, they lack leadership. They lack policy. They lack decision-making. They lack a plan. They lack a methodology. I mean, they are literally just playing catch up every turn, and I am loving it. Right now, it still boggles my mind that people, who was it? Was it which one? Well, I don't know which one it was of the former communications directors for the press secretaries for the Biden administration said that Biden was running rings around everybody. Was that Karine Jean-Pierre?
I was gonna say I think it was Jen Psaki, but then in my head I was like, no, that's exactly something Karine Jean-Pierre would say too. So I really don't know.
We can't keep up with
It
it.
was
He
one
runs
of-
rings around everybody.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think everybody in the Biden administration said that, so they're all
Yeah.
to blame for that.
Well, all said and done, I think what we know is that Trump runs ring around. The man's 78 years old. He can still play golf. He's still out there doing stuff. He only sleeps like 4.5 to 5 hours a night. The guy is literally like just a dynamo. Like, how in the world do you do all that you do? All that, and he eats McDonald's and drinks Diet Coke on a regular basis. But nonetheless, he is getting stuff done. It's like his brain never stops. And it's hilarious to me to watch the Democrats who are like so used to just, well, we're going to do a few things here. You watch and wait and see what we do. And they can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Trump makes the gum. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, I say all that to say what's happening with the law and order is one more piece they didn't see coming. Listen, they're busy trying to counter his economic policies and all the things they're used to presidents doing. He's doing all of that, and then he's diving into things they didn't expect. He's doing things like, out of the blue, he's going to build a ballroom with private money for the White House. Out of the blue, he's going to, do this over here and that over there. He's redesigning the decorating in the White House. I mean, he does all of it himself too. He does all these things where he directs traffic on everything. Biden took naps and had the auto pen sign papers. Amazing the difference. Well, one of the places they didn't expect him to do something is to deal with law and order. It's one thing for them to realize he's probably going to take action on the southern border, and that measure of law and order is important. And then they kind of expected him to do the actual immigration roundups, although I think they were caught off guard by how effective it really has been and how adamant he's been about pursuing it. He's not backing off. But what they didn't see coming is when he addresses things at levels that presidents don't usually go. They're calling it tyranny. They're calling it oppression. That he would dare to send a surge of law enforcement into Washington, D.C. to help clean up the streets. But look at what we're dealing with. The reason why Democrats are having and here's the thing, keep in mind, here's when you're having that water cooler conversation with somebody. When a liberal challenges you, when your liberal uncle comes for a visit, sits at the table, makes a snide remark, let me just go ahead and give you the response. Liberals aren't mad because Trump is trying to pursue law and order. Liberals are mad because Trump's actions are calling attention to their inactions. That's where it comes down to. They are mad right now that he has, by taking action against things like law and order in Washington, D.C., it calls attention to their failings. Suddenly the whole world goes, yeah, why do we have a crime rate higher than that of Mexico City in our nation's capital? Yeah, why is the homelessness so bad in our nation's capital? Yeah, why don't we have enough law enforcement in our nation's capital? Yeah, why do we have no bail and soft on crime policies? And why do we have why? Well, guess what? Nobody was talking about it until Trump took action, were they? Now, all of a sudden, all God's children are sitting up straighter in their chair going, what did he do? Well, he sent federal law enforcement and he sent the National Guard. He says it's for 30 days and we'll see if we need to renew it after that. But they have been out there just, tagging and bagging them. They have lock, cock, and ready to rock. They are doing the thing right now. And you know what's funny? You want to find out whether it's needed or successful? Go ahead and ask the men and women in blue. I dare you. Stop talking to pink hairs who scream in microphones and make no sense. Stop talking to the liberal Karens who show up with signs and demand that the tyrant go away. Stop talking to, talking heads who swear on the MSNBC broadcast that there's really no high crime. Stats are better. They're better than they were last year. Go talk to the men and women in blue who patrol those streets. See if they like what's happening right now. You know what you'll find out? They love it. So having said all that, let me dive into a few resources here and give you a few things to think about. Now, this is not Washington, D.C., but this is indicative of where we are, all right? I pulled this off Fox News because, in my opinion, it paints one of the clearest images of liberal policies and the fact that law enforcement feels threatened by the same people they're called to serve. Fox News has a story dateline yesterday, actually dateline today. A retired Chicago area cop has expressed frustration with Mayor Brandon. By the way, that's the most liberal. I mean, we're finally going to probably have a Mamdani mayor in New York City, which will be more liberal than the Brandon Johnson we now have in Chicago. Brandon Johnson does not deserve the office of the mayor in Chicago. I mean, the Windy City is just getting trashed by that guy. Anyway, a retired Chicago area cop expressed frustration with Mayor Brandon Johnson's refusal to cooperate with ICE. Okay, we've heard this before, but listen to the context. He says they're under orders from the mayor not to cooperate with ICE. In fact, he famously said the Chicago Police Department will never assist ICE, even if it's constitutionally required. This is a guy named Tom Weitzel, who used to be the chief of police in Riverside, which is a suburb of Chicago. In July of this year, it points out in the article, Johnson vowed that his city's police, quote, will never cooperate with ICE. He also recently called ICE raids terrorism and described Trump's America as what it would look like if the Confederacy had won. I mean, my gosh. Here's the thing. Retired Chief Weitzel said, the dangerous thing with that is he's telling them to never assist. He said, so even if ICE needs more police officers because they're under attack, they're being assaulted, maybe they're being battered, he's directing his police department to not cooperate or even assist, which is unheard of. He said, I've never heard that before. I tell you what's going to wind up happening. You're going to wind up having Chicago men and women in uniform responding to an all call one day to ICE, and they're going to do it in defiance of the mayor's orders. I guarantee you, you watch, you wait, it's going to happen. But the men and women in blue are sick to death of these liberal policies. And some of them might even vote Democrat, but they don't agree with this. Weitzel again, he says, you have the local politicians slamming the police. You have the mayor slamming the police. You have the chief of the whole government for the city of Chicago. He, if anything, if anyone thinks he supports police or policing, they're crazy. The mayor is about as anti-police as they come. And you know, nobody should be surprised because he ran on that campaign and he got elected. He said they're going to get police officers hurt. Not only ICE agents, but federal agents. Local police are going to get injured because I can tell you, he said, that when there's an attack on them, and you've seen that throughout the country, he says that some of those caravans have been attacked, the local police, they're going to come to help. You watch. I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. Now, law and order is taking a new bent. All right, we're going to dive into what's happening with the ability of the Trump administration to assist local law enforcement to clean things up. Think about what they did, by the way, in LA. They just did it. Riots in LA over ICE. Remember that? Was that a month ago? Riots in LA. The mayor of LA wanted nothing to do with the idea of quelling the riots, was content to allow them to block streets, to impede commerce, and to basically harass citizens, and was going to do nothing about it. Trump sent in the National Guard. Gavin Newsom sued Trump to sue the Trump administration to try and get them to back off of the National Guard. The courts ruled against Gavin Newsom. Trump was able to keep the National Guard in place. He kept them there for roughly 60 days, and they're already gone. And guess what? The riot stopped. Funny how that works. Well, in a minute, I'll tell you about a new plan being put out by the government that actually has Alabama involved. We'll take a break right now. We'll come right back. And I got more law and order, y'all. Law and order. Bill Williams, Rightside Radio. We will be right back. So on the mortgage broker side of you still do that though, right?
Oh yeah, every day. Yes, sir.
I said broker, it's banker.
But no difference. I help families get into mortgages. I help people realize the dream of home ownership and then understand that they can reorganize their debt. Like right now, there's a lot of families who are struggling because, as you've probably heard, credit card debt is at an all-time high. Yeah. At the end of January, a report came out that said that America had $1.21 trillion in credit card debt. It's never been that high.
No.
And if you take a look from the pandemic to now, it's almost like a hockey stick. It's just through the roof. And I think the reason that is because people are hesitant to refinance out of their low-rate mortgages they locked down during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So they'll say things to me, Phil, like, well, you know, I'm rate sensitive, so I'm not going to refinance at a greater rate. But I almost challenge that, Phil, respectfully, to say, how rate sensitive are you really if you've maxed out a credit card at 31%?
Yeah.
Like once you owe it, it's up to you to figure out how to pay it back. And not only is the interest rate you have on a credit card astronomically high, but the interest you pay on a credit card is not tax deductible, whereas the interest you pay on a mortgage is. So if you could get a cheaper payment and a greater tax deduction, improve your credit score, give yourself more room on that credit card in case something disastrous happens, and lower your monthly payments in the process, how do you lose? But a lot of families just don't really understand that, and they're just taught to think, well, I got a great rate on the mortgage, I need to leave that alone. But it's impeding their ability to take their kids to the movies or go get ice cream or just life.
So you've actually done this for a bit. I can tell by the way you verbalize it. It
Sure.
comes right on out. And I guess too, let me ask you this, because I'm going to chase a rabbit for a second. We all watched the economy over the last 4 years, just the cycles of just craziness, 40-year high inflation, COVID pandemic set the rates low, trying to get the economy back, stimulation money being thrown in. Just it was madness.
Yes.
It was cats and dogs living together. It was all of it. Are you seeing people returning to the table, though? I mean, that conversation you said you can have with people on a regular basis. I do a lot of real estate law. You do the other side of it. You're the
Yes.
lender side. Are you seeing people coming back to the table, so to speak?
A little bit. I mean, the people who are in a bad place or life has dictated that they need to make a move.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, maybe there's a divorce or a loved one passes away or there's an empty nester or someone retires or they lose their job. Those are the type of people who are making moves right now. But people are still buying houses. People are starting a new career and they're excited to have a fresh new start in a new town or a new market. And their life has dictated that they have to buy something else. But I look at here locally, you think about Huntsville, Alabama, there's over 500 jobs that have been announced, and there's rumors it's more, that will be coming from the FBI down to Huntsville. I mean,
Yeah.
Kash Patel was just there last week saying we hope to bring a lot more than
Yeah.
just those 500 jobs. Well, that means there's 500 families, moms and dads, usually a two-family income or two-income household. They've now got to relocate their whole life to Huntsville, Alabama. Now, you and I know Huntsville's awesome, but this wasn't anybody in DC's original plan.
No.
Like they have jobs, like probably only one of those people work for the FBI, but the other person has a job there.
They're also going to find out they can buy a lot more house here than they can in D.C.
Absolutely.
And
But,
some of them never owned a house, and now they'll be able to.
but are people going to rush to buy their existing house in DC? See, that's the problem is
that's a good
they've
point.
got to sell a house there at the same time everybody else is leaving DC. So now there's more inventory than ever before. Are they going to be upside down? Yes, their dollar goes further in Huntsville than it does DC. But if they've still got a mortgage hanging around up there, boy, it's a real challenge. So we've got to get some sort of relief with interest rates. I believe this firmly. As interest rates go, so does the economy.
Yeah.
You know, if we can get real estate moving again, our economy will fix itself. So much of what our economy in America is based on is our single biggest asset. And for most families, that's their house. And so they're not really putting that big asset into play. The economy isn't at full scale. So I think there's pent up. Think about if you had a crank and a water hose. That's what we've got right now.
Yeah.
You've got a ton of folks who want to buy another home. Their current home no longer suits their needs, but they're not going to let go of this great rate. And they know that home sales are slowing. I mean, there's more listings on the market. There's more inventory than there's been in a while. But by the time, we unkink that hose with low interest rates, we're going to be back in a 2020 situation where we have more buyers than we have inventory. Those prices will come back. So I do think now, if you're a savvy investor or if you're willing to see what's coming, interest rate relief will be there. You can still get great deals on homes right now. If you wait until the rates are better, you will have missed it. I mean, you remember how crazy that was? Multiple offers the same day. It was bananas.
We were doing 5, 6, 7 closings a week in my small firm, and it was in a market, by the way, where I'm at right now that is not Huntsville, Alabama,
Right.
Which is not a depressed market by any stretch, but the refinance especially was going through the roof with the rates.
Yes.
All right, so let me ask you this: I can hear the passion in your voice. It's obvious you love what you do, and you're. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Laying it down thick with some bulletproof influence. That's what we're doing. All right, listen, I'm jumping right back in, law and order. So one of the things that I think is very fascinating is the fact that Trump's administration is taking novel approaches. Now, listen, the jury's out on this one. This is what they call a pre-decisional phase of this particular story I'm about to tell you. But I hold here in my callous former paratrooper hands an article from 1819 News. You've seen how Trump has deployed the National Guard when necessary to quell rioting. And that's, by the way, that's part of the National Guard's work, civil disturbance. It's not as common for the president to call them out, but if local authorities won't, then under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, he does have that authority. So President Trump called out the National Guard in both L.A. and now in D.C. Well, the Pentagon, according to 1819 News, is developing plans to start up what they call a new National Guard Quick Reaction Force. Interesting. According to multiple media reports on Tuesday, the Domestic Civil Disturbance Quick Reaction Force would comprise 600 National Guard troops on standby. The troops will be divided into two groups of 300 stationed in military bases in Arizona and Alabama. So we'd be looking at, and what I understand is this is pre-decisional. In other words, ain't nobody's got a right to say this is going to happen yet. They're talking about it. But they'd be outfitted with weapons and riot gear, and they'd receive training. I've had that training before. I've had the riot control training as a National Guardsman. The face shields, the body armor, the sticks, all of it. Reduced use of force, the whole thing. But these reaction teams, it says, would work on 90-day rotations. In other words, it wouldn't be like one unit stood like a brand new National Guard unit. It would be people activated for 90 days at a time. They'd stay on station, get their training, and be on standby in case they were needed, launch the QRF, send them wherever you need to send them. And then 90 days later, the next group comes in. So, I mean, it's fascinating. It's an interesting plan. It would certainly be unusual and novel, but I get it. And it would be interesting to watch how it plays out. I just wonder where they'd station them. I'm thinking right now, we've got any number of facilities, obviously. We've got some right here in the state. The National Guard Training Center at Fort McClellan is probably where they put them because it's got barracks and everything. It's set up for that. But we shall see. Jeanine Pirro, man, that woman's a firebrand. Jeanine Pirro is wearing out the left. So Jeanine Pirro is a part of the Trump assault on law and order, or restoring of law and order in Washington, D.C. You know her, Judge Jeanine, who's been a pundit on TV. What you may not know is she spent 25 years or more as a prosecutor and then a judge. And I mean, she's real. She's not just like some TV judge. She is literally someone who's been in the trenches for years as a career prosecutor and crime fighter and a judge. She's been a pundit for the last, 10 or 15 years, I guess. But President Trump recently appointed her, and she was confirmed by the U.S. Senate. She is now the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. This is one of the best things he could have done because she is having none of it. And when I say none of it, I mean none of it. So the whole idea that soft on crime and you've got to, aren't you a little bit aware of how, you're coming, isn't crime rate down? Well, she's having none of it. I got a soundbite here. I'm going to call up soundbite 1, if you don't mind, please. This is Jeanine Pirro. She was in a press conference. She had just finished talking about everything she was doing from her office as U.S. Attorney. And then she got a question wanting to know about crime going down, and she was having none of it. Play it.
Oh, stop it. We are putting all kinds of resources onto the street.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Martin issued a press release hailing the drop in crime rates at the end of it. What changed?
It's never enough. This changed. This changed. It's never enough. You tell these families crime has dropped. You tell the mother of the intern who was shot going out from McDonald's near the Washington Convention Center, oh, crime is down. You tell the kid who was just beat the hell and back with a severe concussion and a broken nose, crime is down. No, that falls on deaf ears. And my ears are deaf to that. And that's why I fight the fight. Thank you.
I'm not sure they're going to want to ask her a question again next time.
No, she just about broke the mic too.
Yeah, she did. That was more than a mic drop. That was like a mic slam.
Manhandling.
Yes, it was. But that's exactly what it takes. Can you imagine? They're reeling right now because the soft on crime policies of local DAs and local city council and the local judges don't know what to do with the fact that federal law enforcement has now been introduced into the mix, and they're actually out on the streets arresting people and giving authority to the U.S. attorney to come in there and prosecute crime. She just had a post a little while ago. I was looking at it on the screen, so I can find it again. Here it is. She announced, and she's got a video of her talking. I'm looking at it on X. She said, "You assault a law enforcement officer, you will be prosecuted." This guy, she didn't say what guy, but I think I know which one it is. This guy thought it was funny. He doesn't think it's funny today. We just charged him with a felony. In other words, she's not only doing this to protect the streets, but she's making sure the men and women in blue know that she's got their back. And y'all, the sycophants that have been just like sucking up to the criminals for years in DC are sitting back in their chair going, wait a minute, you can do that? Yeah, she can do that. And yeah, she is. She is wearing it out, and I'm loving it. And if you look at it, by the way, that soundbite you heard a moment ago, if you were watching the live stream, you got to actually see it. But she was through at the press conference. That was a comment thrown at her as she was about to leave. And she grabbed that mic, and with passion, she just told him, she just said, and when she said, "Oh, stop it. This is what changed. This is what changed." She was pointing at posters of victims. What she was trying to say was, we are not going to go down that road of you trying to tell me that crime rates are down. So the crime rates are not down. Go tell that to the victims' families. See, that's the thing, is so often the left forgets that the victims should have a voice in this. I saw it all the time in Montgomery. I'll never forget. If I have time, I'll say the story real quick. We had Sue Bell Cobb used to be the very liberal Chief Justice of our Alabama Supreme Court. One of my first years down in Montgomery, she was still in office. She resigned at some point. No one could figure out why. But Sue Bell Cobb got in my face one day after Judiciary Committee, said, "Senator Williams, what are you going to tell your constituents about overcrowding in prisons?" And I said, "Madam Chief Justice, what are you going to tell my constituents about criminals who are walking the streets committing crimes again because we were too soft on them?" She did not like that answer. She was like 5'0" and poking her finger in my face. And I just basically said, "Not going to have it." That's what it takes. That's what it takes. More of that coming up. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. What you do, which one's more fun, this or the podcasting wrestling side of your life?
Well, listen, that's hard to answer.
Just me and you talking. Which one's more fun?
The figuring out how to structure a deal is fun. Laughing and cutting up with my buddies, telling inappropriate jokes to make people laugh about old wrestling stories, that is more fun.
Yeah.
But there's nothing more rewarding than feeling like you had a meaningful impact on someone's life.
Yep.
And I realized that we can do that with the mortgage business. I mean, I routinely help people experience, a $1,500 a month savings. I mean, that's like they had a second really nice part-time job, because that's like net dollars. So think about how much you would have to earn in order to bring home $1,500. Like, that allows families to do more for their kids, for their moms, for their dads, be more, active in their community. Just relief and peace of mind. That's what it's about.
How long after the fall of Saigon did you remain in the country? You personally remain in the country?
4 years.
So 4 years,
And
so
I think
1979-ish.
1979's 2 weeks after my birthday, which is in May, it's when my sister and I escaped Vietnam.
Okay, well, tell me about that, because I know in one of the speeches of yours that I reviewed, it wasn't your whole family that came out.
Right.
It was just a few, and your parents had to make a choice, basically.
Yes.
So what was that family discussion like to decide who leaves and who stays?
Gosh, I remember that night very clearly. I had several aunts and uncles. They were able to afford to pay passages. And when I say pay passages to leave Vietnam, meant that you're paying the official to look this way so you can escape
So
this way.
It's a bribe.
It's a bribe. So if you get caught, they can throw you in jail. So basically, you bribe the government to leave. So I had a few aunts and uncles that had signed up to leave Vietnam on this riverboat, and they're going to Australia because they felt Australia is the safest place to be. And also, we have a few cousins that already left Vietnam before the fall of Saigon, and they settled in Australia.
Okay.
So overnight, one of my aunt came home and told my dad that there may be some empty spots on this refugee boat, and that we should take the empty spots. And there's 8 of us in the family, my parents and 6 kids, me being the oldest.
Okay. How old were you at the time?
I was 12.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And basically, my parents have only a few hours to decide this. And my parents, of course, at this time in 1979, everybody was struggling. We don't have a whole lot of money. And I know it was a lot of sacrifice for my parents to even, bribe someone to the official for me and my sister to leave. And so, yeah, there were only enough money for just 2 passages. And so they picked me, being the oldest. I was 12. And my next sister, she was she's a little bit over 10 years old, to leave with my aunt and uncle. And my parent has to make the decision overnight. I mean, I just can't imagine.
No.
The pain and
Do you remember them telling you?
I remember, yeah. And I remember my parents said to trust them, and I think, being the oldest of 6, I'm pretty bratty. It's kind of like a bratty, and also kind of.
Were you headstrong?
Yeah. I mean, I can fight any boys in my neighborhood growing up. I mean, I would have like a spitting contest with the boys. And anyway, so I just felt like at that time, I felt like I'm trusting my parents. And even though now looking back, I can't even imagine them having to make this decision. No. Because, honestly, they don't know if they will ever see me and my sister again. They don't know that, right? But they have to make this hard decision because they knew that at least 2 of their kids may have a better life elsewhere than Vietnam.
Well, I mean, that's huge. And I've raised kids, and I understand you've raised your kids. And I cannot imagine at 10 and 12 years old sending them away and knowing never see them again.
I remember saying,
what an amazing thing.
Saying goodbye to my little brother. He was 2 years old, and that night we slept in a mosquito enclosement. That's how we sleep in Vietnam.
Under
I remember
a net?
a net, yeah, mosquito net. I remember hugging my brother and one of my sister, 2 of the other sister. It was summer. So there was no school. So 2 of the sisters did visit some of our relatives elsewhere. I remember thinking, this is maybe the last time I get to see 2 of my siblings and my parents. And I just, that morning when my dad took my sister and I to the coast to leave on this river boat, looking back and seeing my mom there, not sure if I ever see her again. That was hard.
Oh, well, I can't even imagine. I also can't imagine not just your side, but I can't even imagine the parent side of it. But so you got on the boat though, and you're on there, and you do have some family ties on the boat with you. You have an aunt, uncle, and some cousins.
Yes.
How many total?
There was 2 sets of aunts and uncles and 2 of their kids.
Okay. And then how many people total on the boat? I mean, is this
It's about 400.
Oh, this is not a small boat.
No, well, no, it's a small boat, but they fit as many people in there as they can, and there was not room. There was only room just to sit. There's not even room to lay down. And I remember one time my sister and I had our backs together just to sleep because there's no room to lay down.
All right, I heard you speak. This was not a smooth voyage, this boat, and you were actually at some point intercepted by pirates. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, how'd that go?
Well, not very well. But well, first of all, the South China Sea was full of pirates at that time, and because they knew that the Vietnamese refugees carry gold and jewelries.
Who just said solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, listen, I think that this whole section I'm doing on law and order, and I got some text messages here. I'll get to those in a moment. By the way, if you want to text in 833-687-4448, that's 833-68-RIGHT. I'll be taking those here in just a few minutes. But criminals are sitting up and taking notice. They are suddenly realizing, oh, wait, there's consequences? Hang on a second. How's that work? Consequences? What's that? Keep in mind, in Washington, D.C., and I'll refresh on a couple of pieces here. In Washington, D.C., being the District of Columbia, not a state, D.C. has a population of between, I've forgotten now, some accounts said 702,000. I saw one that said almost 800,000. I don't know. But you see the rough size there. But the population of D.C. has been only under what they call home rule since 1973. What, 52 years. So for 52 years of the history of our country, they have had the ability to make their own laws and have a mayor and a city council of their own in Washington, D.C. Prior to that, it was run by the federal government. Congress took care of it. But they decided to have, now they have a metro police force, they have city council, they have mayoral elections, they have all that. And they have an amazing amount of corruption, and they constantly elect some screaming liberals. I'm talking about some screaming liberals. Keep in mind what happened during the Black Lives Matter debacles. They're tearing down statues. They're rioting in the streets of our nation's capital. They went ahead and named an entire plaza Black Lives BLM Plaza, right next to the White House. I mean, it was just ridiculous. You can look at any number of things that have happened in our city, in our national capital city, with crime, and the fact that what that does is it A, drives down tourism, B, it's an embarrassment on the world stage, and C, it makes it very difficult for the citizens to feel like they have a quality of life. Some of the things we're dealing with right now in looking at what's happened since home rule was instituted are the fact that the DC criminal code has been put in place by the city council. Now, the caveat to that, I will say, is that Congress allegedly has oversight, because the 1973 DC Home Rule Act left oversight with Congress, which is why the federal government can step in. That's the law. But I will also tell you that typically speaking, they passed that law so they didn't have to micromanage them, and look at where it got us. We now have no cash bail. Well, that's ridiculous. You know what no cash bail is? Bail is supposed to be that thing that puts a stringer on you abiding by the terms of your ability to be released while you're pending trial. You have to post bail. In other words, you got some skin in the game. You have to put some money down to buy a bond, like an insurance policy, in case you run off. And by putting that money down, or by attaching the lien to your house, or pledging your car or something, by giving your assets to it, you have now got some skin in the game. That's what posting bond is supposed to be. Somebody can post bond for you, or you do it yourself. Guess what happens in liberal venues like Washington, D.C.? No cash bail. That's not bail. That's called taking a walk. That's a get out of jail free card. That's exactly what that is. It's a get out of jail free card. And so when crime takes place in liberal cities like D.C., criminals don't care. They're not going to worry about having some skin in the game. That's silly. Then you add to it the fact that they were so soft on young criminals that it got to the point of being ridiculous. Under the age of 25, there were no mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines. None. Mandatory minimum means, like, if you commit a Class A felony, you're guaranteed X number of years. That's just, and you know it. So going into it, you commit that crime, you know you're facing like 20 to life, 20 being the minimum. There are no mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines for, thugs under the age of 25. You can go into the Army at 18. You can be a criminal without any fear of having bail or sentencing guidelines to the age of 25 in DC. Story here from frontpagemag.com. DC cops only caught 32% of armed robbers. Whew. How much responsibility does DC's Metro Force have for the things getting worse? Well, I would say it's also subject to the leadership of the city. I'm not going to blame the men and women in blue, but they say in 2009, DC had a clearance rate of 75%. By 2012, it was up to 82%. By 2019, it dropped to 69%. By 2023, it was down to 52%. Last year, it's 60. What does that mean? That means they're not clearing the crimes out. You know, one of the reasons why? We just found out, I did last night, I just found out by watching one news source. The DC Crime Lab, where they process the evidence, has been out of commission for failing to meet certification guidelines for 4 years. 4 years. Prosecutors, if they wanted to prosecute, couldn't even get the evidence cleared. You couldn't get forensics. You couldn't get, figure out whether the bullet matched the gun. Listen. The bottom line is, according to this article here, that DC went from resolving 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 4 murders to only resolving 3 out of 5. Okay, that means they're going down in their capabilities of solving crime, which means people weren't going to jail, which means bad guys were still on the street. Now, that being said, the surge is underway, and it's something to watch. Surge is underway. Tom Homan, never one to mince words. By the way, I almost feel like it's a prerequisite to work in the Trump administration that you're willing to say whatever needs to be said in front of a microphone. There's no political speak. No one's dancing. Have you noticed that?
It's the exact opposite of the Biden administration, where everybody had their script, rinse and repeat, and you just say the same thing, and everybody's in congruence. Where, yeah, it can cause flare-ups, like kind of what we saw with Bongino and whatever weeks ago. But also, when you got Type A people that are just doing their thing and that can actually be trusted to say things,
yeah.
It's refreshing.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's
okay,
very refreshing.
So people are actually doing things,
It got so bad, Jesse Waters still jokingly refers to Karine Jean-Pierre as Notebook. That's what he called her. Notebook.
Yeah.
Notebook's gone. We don't miss Notebook. All she did was read from the notebook.
Exactly. That was everybody across the board.
Unbelievable. So Tom Homan was speaking on a recent interview, and he was criticizing the media for downplaying crime in Washington, D.C. And he points out that while legacy media outlets have reported that crime decreased by 35%, their figures are relying upon police data that exclude offenses like felonies and aggravated assaults. Like, why would they do that? Why would they exclude violent crimes? Thereby making the district's crime problem seem better than it is, and it's not. It also points out, too, in this article, if you remember, we have one of the commanders in D.C. who's now on leave because it was found that he was cooking the books to make things look better than they were. All right. Homan says, it's the same people who said the border was secure as you and I watch thousands of people cross the border every day. They think we're idiots. So, anybody that transits D.C., works in D.C., or lives in D.C., they know the truth. This is Tom Homan. He said, and just like the ones who were smart, we knew the border was not secure. We knew the border was a historic crisis. And the lies, and the lies. They think if they lie enough, people will start believing them. But Americans are smarter than that. I agree. I completely agree. All right, National Guard is in D.C. right now. And it's an odd thing. We've seen DEA, ATF, and other federal law enforcement and National Guard all now patrolling the streets. Yesterday, the surge went on, and they made immediately 23 arrests. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider that what it did was 23 arrests just by federal law enforcement, that means they're out there, they're game on, and they're getting something done. I think criminals are going to take note. And on Tuesday, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser met with federal officials. I appreciated this. It's not been said enough, but Pam Bondi has already had a sit-down meeting with Mayor Bowser to assure her that this is not a long-term thing and to discuss, in her words, how they can work together to make sure that federal law enforcement is providing to Metro DC what they need to combat this issue. And I am aware that Muriel Bowser is a liberal, like a very much, but I will say this: she has been far more game on in terms of cooperating with the Trump administration than I ever expected. I thought sure she'd fight back on the whole BLM Plaza being repainted. She didn't. I thought sure that she would never stand next to Trump. She came to the White House and did a press conference. There you go. All that to say, National Guard troops are right now leaving their DC armory on Tuesday mornings, going out in military vehicles around the streets of the nation's capital. And the presence of troops and federal law enforcement comes as Trump is working to actually crack down on crime in our nation's capital. And Mayor Bowser has said that her hands are tied and she's leaving her administration with no choice but to comply and adapt. You know what that is? That's her saying, I'm not going to fight this. You know why? Because they actually want it. Because they know the citizens want it. Because the only people that are complaining are the same ones who lie about everything that Trump does anyway. They're the same ones who applauded Black Lives Matter tearing down statues and ripping up streets. They're the same ones who said that the border was secure and it wasn't. They're the same ones who think that Brandon Johnson's a good mayor and who like the idea of Mondani coming into New York. They're the same ones who could care less about safety and security as long as the criminal gets a pass and the victims are ignored. The only people complaining about this are the ones who have no skin in the game. The men and women in blue, the people who are victims in the city, and even the mayor right now are openly receiving the Trump administration's efforts. That is admittedly going to be temporary and it's far overdue. That's enough of that. We'll take a break right now. I'll come back and get your text messages. That's round one, Dipper one, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
With them to start their lives elsewhere, right?
Right.
So piracy is, I think it was estimated that a quarter of the refugee boat people was robbed by pirates.
Wow.
And they're from Thailand and other, Malaysia, Indonesia, and all that. But yeah, we were, after several days at sea, we actually landed in Malaysia.
So you went ashore in Malaysia, or is this before the pirates or after?
This is okay. So this part may be a little bit sensitive,
Okay.
in a way, but this is the truth. We landed in Malaysia, and we thought we were going to be rescued. Well, the Malaysian Navy came out and they tied our boat to their boat, and they pulled us out to the sea.
Oh, wow.
And we thought we were getting pulled to somewhere like a refugee camp or something. They pulled us out to sea where there's no people that can see them. They robbed us.
The Malaysian Navy.
Yes, because they were in uniform.
Wow. Wow. Did you have any personal items of your own stolen? Were there any people that were taken? I mean,
Yeah,
I would
well,
imagine human trafficking is also an issue and sometimes in this.
that would have happened, I believe, with all my heart. But if it wasn't for the grace of God, God intervened during this situation because a huge storm was brewing. So they started robbing people, and they found a bunch. They came over with metal detector,
Yeah.
and the captain of our boat has hidden some gold on the boat, and they found the gold, and it was a lot of gold. And so they were busy doing that. And then they make people strip off their jewelry. And I remember my mom had sent some jewelry with us, some gold bracelets and necklaces and stuff. And my sister and I actually strip them off of us, and we would stuff them in our mouths just
wow.
to hide from the pirates. So that was saved. But they found a lot of gold from the captain that they didn't want to bother with the people too much. And even while they were robbing us, there was this huge storm brewing really fast, and they wanted to get out of there. So
Sometimes God calms a storm and sometimes he brings a storm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the storm was brewing really fast, and they were trying to rob us really fast, so they didn't search everybody.
So you got to keep your,
So my family got to keep ours.
wow.
Jewelry. But that storm got them out of there. And their plan was they disabled our engine and threw some of our provision overboard. So they think that someone's going to capsize our
They
little
disabled
boat.
the engine, left the boat just adrift?
Yes.
Okay.
So they were hoping that storm would capsize our boat and kill all of us. So they don't have to do the killing themselves. We believe that is their plan. But that storm, if they didn't capsize a boat, that they were hoping we would be floating in the South China Sea, starved to death because they disabled our engine. We couldn't go anywhere.
How long did you stay adrift after that?
Several days.
Wow.
Several days adrift. And that storm actually carried us to Indonesia, closer to Indonesia.
Which is where you wound up.
Yes.
In a refugee camp, am I
Yes, yes. So the Indonesians saw a boat and they came out and they helped us.
That's an amazing circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. God just intervened.
How about that?
I believe that with all my heart.
Well, I believe it with you. There's Operation Gothic Serpent, which is heading into Somalia, became known as the Battle of Mogadishu. A lot of your book, of course, and rightfully so, is focused on that mission. I want to dive into that for a bit because that's the one. I mean, your situation in the Battle of Mogadishu took you out of running in obscurity in terms of your personal name. And thrust you into the eyes of the entire world. And I remember that. I remember when that happened. It was amazing to see it. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making the world safer, one soundbite at a time. All right. So, by the way, we just got word from quite a few of you. Thank you very much for letting us know on the text lines that 92.5 out of Huntsville is apparently having some difficulties because suddenly WVNN, which is our broadcast station out of Huntsville, began playing another channel, WZYP, which is a classic rock channel, I believe.
Pop. Actually.
It's pop. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Pop. But yeah, so I apologize if suddenly some of y'all are hearing things that are not us.
Hey, but in the meantime, if you're out, if somehow you're hearing this on VNN and having issues, you can just go to our live stream at rightside.media.org.
That's exactly right. Rightside.media.org. We got the live stream on every single day, and a bunch of y'all are doing that right now. In fact, JP said that as soon as we got word that the station was having trouble, we saw about 20 more people join the live stream. So yeah. Love that. Text your friends. Tell them live stream's where it's at, baby. All right, let me get some text messages and do that. And I appreciate, by the way, as soon as y'all hear it, we did contact them, let them know what was going on, and said, hey, could y'all please fix yourself? And they'll do it. So those of y'all that suddenly find yourself, listening to Katy Perry or something, we apologize. Mountain Mikey from Flintstone, Georgia, says legacy media conveniently ignores reports of how the arrest books may well have been cooked to whitewash crime stats, giving the appearance of, quote, safe streets in D.C. That police commander is now under investigation and he's on leave. Still no mainstream reporting. And he gives a source Blaze Media. Thank you very much. Remember, it isn't always what the media tells you. Many times it's what they do not tell you. Mountain Mikey, a recovering journalist. Mountain Mikey, appreciate you, man. And yeah, you're spot on, brother. That's exactly what's happening. We have corrupted data that you can't trust. And then if you ask the men and women in the police departments, or if you ask the victims of the crimes, they'll tell you they don't feel safe. One of the most compelling I saw was Scott Jennings, who I was on with last week on CNN. He actually witnessed a murder in the DC subway, and he said it's just you can't tell me it's safe streets when I watched a guy get shot right in front of me. And he's right. I totally get it.
But that's it's so funny to me. It's like, oh, crime went down from 35% to 32%. We're done. Crime is solved. It's like, not really.
Things are getting better from what?
Yeah. It's like, well, I don't know if you should be taking a victory lap.
Is our homicide rate still higher than Mexico City?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. Is our homicide rate still higher than Bogota, Colombia? Yes, it shouldn't be.
Like, I think the measure should be if you can walk 100 feet downtown DC and either A, not see a bunch of homeless people, and don't feel like you have to constantly be looking over your shoulder behind your back to make sure you're safe. Like, I think that's the measure. It's like, oh, well, it's from, I'm making up numbers too, by the way, with 35. So, oh, it's 35 to 32. I can walk around in DC at midnight. I'm fine. You know, it's like, it's not the case.
And there are places, there are places where it's okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places where it's not. Brian from Decatur says, I went to Washington, D.C. several years ago, got on the wrong subway. When I came to the surface at 8 o'clock at night, a police officer told me to get my butt out of there and told me right where to go. Wow. No doubt. Tom from Decatur, Alabama says, the real problem with the Democrats is no matter what they do or how much evidence is against them, they never have to face any consequences. Every day they release unclassified damning evidence against high-level Democrats, and all we hear is the DOJ is investigating it. 200 plus days and not one indictment. This is why Democrats keep breaking the law and pulling stunts like the Texas House members. No accountability. All right. So, Tom, I will tell you this. Indictments do not come down as fast as you would like. They just don't. And especially if you want them to stick. If you want a real case with a grand jury indictment that has evidence attached to it, you have to keep in mind the people who are now presenting that evidence have only been in office for 6 months. I do believe you're going to see some indictments. I do. I think you're going to see some things, and there's going to be some perp walks. You also, by the way, everything does not involve criminal activity. Sometimes it's things like those FBI guys who were dismissed and their careers were ended last week. That's a big deal. They just suddenly lost their jobs. They may not go to jail, but don't think that doesn't mean no accountability. There's different layers of accountability. Sometimes what you might not be able to get proven in a court of law is still plenty enough to be fired for cause. So there's things that can be done. Steve from Athens, Alabama says, did you know yesterday was George Soros' 95th birthday? Did you know I didn't care? He says, do you think he enjoyed a happy birthday? I don't think he's happy. I don't think he understands what happy is. Jeff from Indiana says, hey, Phil, of course, crime rate is down in D.C. in a 30-year low. That's because they're not prosecuting criminals. And if you don't prosecute them, it's not a statistic. He said, I want to know how many crimes are reported and see if that number is through the roof. Yeah, that's fair. Dave from Capshaw, Alabama. What's he sending me? Something on Babylon B, I bet. Let's see. Yep. Babylon B. Puzzled DC police chief asked reporters, what's this black and white card that goes wee-o, wee-o? The DC police chief, man. The DC police chief is getting hammered. JP brought it up earlier if you didn't see it. The DC police chief was asked, now that the federal government is involved, what's the chain of command? And she goes, what does that mean? And immediately Mayor Bowser took the microphone. Anyway, we got more. We're switching gears. Coming up next, we're going to cook up a batch of home fries. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. But for those who don't recall, Operation Gothic Serpent, the intro into Mogadishu for the United States actually started under George H.W. Bush.
Correct.
But it transitioned in early 93 when Clinton took office.
Correct.
So you were there during Clinton's era, correct?
Yes.
All right. So Clinton took office in January 93. Task Force Ranger is the name of the U.S. presence, I guess, at the airfield there. And then in October, was it October 3rd, I think? Mm-hmm. October 3rd, 93, launched what many people just refer to as Black Hawk Down because that's the book and the movie. And I guess code word Irene was what launched the mission, right?
It was.
Which my secretary downstairs at the law firm, her name is Irene. I
Oh,
told her
really?
one day, I said, I don't know if you're aware of the use of your name in modern pop culture. And she went, I've never heard that. So anyway.
And actually, that's my character that says it in the movie.
That is your character. Yeah. And I want to talk about the movie and all that too at some point just to get your thoughts on it. But Rangers have the mission of going in and securing some high-value targets, or securing the scene so that Delta can secure the high-value targets. You're part of the flight in. Who were you bringing in, by the way?
So I was the flight lead, which means I'm responsible for my whole flight of aircraft of the Ranger blocking force. So it's basically split into two pieces. We had the assault force, which is where the Delta guys are. They're primarily on Little Birds.
Yeah.
And they're going to go in first because they want the element of surprise. They want to be, busting doors down before, with limited amount of time to react, right? If you put the blocking force in first, then you bring the assault force in, the bad guys have a little bit more time to react. So they're going in first. We're right behind them. So as soon as their birds pull out, we're moving in, and I had 4 Blackhawks that made up the blocking force, plus 2 spare attack little birds, plus the search and rescue birds. So we're all coming in together on the second wave, basically. And we just set up a box. I mean, all they want is put a ranger platoon on each corner, and the purpose is twofold. One, keep more bad guys from getting in, and then obviously we call them leakers, keeping the people you're after from getting out. And that all went pretty smoothly, even though we'd done it 6 times before. This was the 7th mission.
Right.
And, we had tremendous success. We had captured, I think, 27 people on a list of 50, taken no casualties of any significance. We didn't lose any birds. I mean, it was all going pretty well. There were 3-day missions and 3-night missions leading up to that. And this 7th mission is a day mission, which created some risk factors that we knew about, but, not my call.
Part of the job.
But yeah, the commander makes the call.
Right.
They're within tolerance, I guess you could say, and when we go, and then all hell broke loose.
Yeah, it got crazy on the ground pretty quick, didn't it?
It did.
I know we had one ranger injured on the fast rope end, and that created a scene. And then I guess the all call went out, and it seemed like everybody in Mogadishu had an AK-47, and they all ran to the scene.
And that was their strategy, which we found out later. They actually had set up a system where once they knew where we were hitting the target, and again, they learned this over time, right? When I talk about this, I try to compare it to sports, right? If you keep running the same play, the defense is going to adapt to that play, right? They understand, okay, this formation means this is what they're going to do, so here's how we counter that. It works the same way in the military. And so having done it 6 times, they obviously understood, okay, the helicopters will go to a target. That's where, they're going to put people on the ground. They're going to try to apprehend folks. If we can pin them in there, then, we might have some chance of
Plus, they were blocking roads, so the
Right.
ground convoy was
Absolutely.
having trouble.
Yep. So we found out after that was their strategy. Once they knew where the target was, they were all going to close on it, and it worked pretty well, actually.
Well, the Blackhawks stayed on station. In fact, one thing I've never known is what was the purpose of y'all? If there's going to be a ground convoy for the exfil, what was the purpose of y'all remaining on station like you did?
So we kept 2 attack little birds and 2 Blackhawks over the target for fire support. So
Okay.
the little birds, they've got miniguns and rockets.
To Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast US of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This show, I mean to say, y'all, it goes like from Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the line from there to what we now call, once again, Fort Benning. Benning. Yeah. And then there's big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. I'm telling you, that's just the radio. Then there's all of y'all out there in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web, some of you even more so because we had problems with our Huntsville station there for a few minutes. Live streaming the show is always your option. Live streaming on places like X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and our website, rightsidemedia.org. Always remember that, rightsidemedia.org. And then all you podcasters who catch it after the fact, listen. The bottom line is wherever you pick up this show, the reason why I kind of do that diatribe right there about all the places where people watch or listen to the show is because I want you to know that we see you there. We know you're there. We appreciate the fact that you do. It blesses us. You're the reason why we do what we do. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I am going to jump into another dipper right now. By the way, we are understanding that our Huntsville station is back on track. They had a technical glitch that sort of flipped the script and made them into a pop station for a few minutes. If you
are listening in Huntsville, you might want to text the show and confirm for us that we are good to go. But that's what we understand. So thank you very much. I'm going to do something that we have to do periodically. It's very easy for me to sit here and just talk about things that are happening out there somewhere else. Washington, D.C., the Trump administration, all things good. You know, it's just like, it's important to know those things, but sometimes you got to pay attention to what's happening right here among you. That's going to be so important that you know what's happening in your backyard. And so every once in a while I gather up stories and I realize I've got enough stuff there that I've got to do what I call cooking up a batch of home fries. Yeah. Cook them up, baby. I got to tell you about some things that are happening in and around and amongst us. So one of the things that's going on right now is the U.S. Senate race. Listen, the U.S. Senate race in Alabama, and they're about to have it in Tennessee too, because Marsha Blackburn has said that she is going to run for governor, just like Tommy Tuberville's running for governor. So that's two conservative senators who are stepping away from their U.S. Senate roles to go very likely be the next governors of their respective states, Tennessee and Alabama. But right now, the race we have in Alabama is really heating up. So we got a new poll out. Yesterday, if you were listening to the show, you heard us have, we had U.S. Representative Barry Moore on the air. Barry Moore serves in Congress, very conservative. He came on to announce yesterday, he announced his run for the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Tuberville. We already have Attorney General Steve Marshall, who will be on the show with us tomorrow. We have already had Jared Hudson, the former Navy SEAL, who is also in that race. Y'all, we got a deep bench on that race. It's amazing. But a recent poll right now shows Attorney General Steve Marshall allegedly in the lead to be Alabama's next U.S. Senator. He's got the name ID. He certainly, among all of them, has been running statewide offices or races, so he knows his way around. He's well liked. The poll was commissioned by the Business Council of Alabama, the Montgomery-based research firm Signal, which, by the way, Signal I've worked with before, and Signal, it's one of their guys, John Rogers, who comes on this show periodically to talk about polling. But Signal did the poll, and when they asked who they would vote today in the Senate race, 24% said Marshall, 12.9% said Bruce Pearl, who's not even in the race. I mean,
okay. I don't mean to interject, but I think that right there speaks wonders of like if he were to actually do it, how much of a spoiler he would have been.
Well, the funny thing is they polled him. It wasn't like that was a spontaneous eruption of Bruce Pearl names. That was them saying, "Would you vote for Bruce Pearl?" Oh yeah,
yeah, exactly. It's nuts.
So he was second. 8.8% said Barry Moore, who just got in the race. The poll was done before he got in. 3% said Jared Hudson. All right, so I'm not sure what the margin of error is on this poll. Margin of error means it would be like a plus or minus 3. But the margin of error, I don't know what the crosstabs were. When you're looking at polling, there's different things. You look at the margin of error because you can be within the margin of error, which means it's anybody's guess. You can also look at what's called the crosstabs, which is the way the questions broke out. Like if you break it down by racial demographics or break it down by gender or break it down by age gap, you can find all kinds of ways to interpret that might be even more meaningful. But right now, just on its face, 24% said Marshall, 12.9% said Bruce Pearl, who's I don't think is going to run. 8.8% said Barry Moore, and 3% said Jared Hudson. Now, 51% were undecided.
That's what I was going to add too. Yeah. I think it went up to 57 or something when Bruce Pearl was removed.
You take Bruce Pearl out, it's 57.5%. So what that basically means is it's still anybody's game, but Marshall right now has the early lead. That also tells me that were the race to happen today, we might have a runoff. That's the interesting dynamic. When you have multiple names in a race, you have to get to 50+%. So 50 and half, okay. But if you get 49, it's a runoff because somebody else got a lion's share. So we're going to see. But right now, Bruce Pearl is up. Here's another story that just, listen, y'all, this is a tragic story, and it boggles my mind. You may have heard, and and I'm not kidding when I say it's tragic. A little 3-year-old boy, Katarius, his nickname was KJ, Katarius Starks Jr., was in DHR custody. He had been taken out of his house for whatever reason. I'm sure there was a heartbreaking story about the home conditions, and DHR had to remove him from the house. He's in DHR custody. And a DHR worker left him in a car for more than 5 hours on a hot summer day, just about a week or two ago. And a little Katarius Starks died. the social worker for DHR, in my opinion, we have never really seen what I call acceptance of responsibility for this. Maybe I get it. Maybe there's still more to be found. But what we're learning right now is that the Alabama DHR staffer actually was transporting the little guy for a supervised visit with his father in Bessemer. The visit ended around 11:30. The staffer then allegedly went and ran personal errands with the child still in the car, which, okay, problem number one, that's not your role. You have somebody else's child in your care. You don't go run personal errands on the taxpayer's dime. And that child got left in the car. They returned home around 12:30 and went inside, leaving the windows up and the engine off. Temperatures were at 95 degrees or higher. The heat index was over 109, and the child expired in the vehicle. The DHR employee, his last name Stanford. Keela Stanford. Keela Stanford has been arrested and accused of one count of leaving a child or incapacitated person unattended in a motor vehicle, resulting in serious physical injury. All right. The maddening part of this is the governor's office and DHR have really not spoken out. They have really not, in my opinion, owned this. And I understand that there's an open investigation, but there does not appear to be near enough remorse from people who are in charge. And there is no denying that this little toddler was in DHR custody when that happened. That's a sad story.
I'll do another one. Where's Black Lives Matter on this one? Is it only, certain cases? Oh, only this one. Or is it, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting they select the stuff to get upset about.
You know, what's also crazy is that person, Keela Stanford, working for DHR, was supposed to be taking this child to visit a family that didn't care for him well enough or had problems in the house that made it unsafe for the child, and did a worse job than the parents who can't have custody of their child. It's unreal. It's sad. I'm saying justice for little guy, please. Another piece that's coming out just last night, 1819 News has this piece, Dateline today, actually. President Donald Trump has announced his intent to name 3 U.S. District Judge nominees to the Middle and Northern Districts of Alabama. Okay, so this is a big deal. This is actually a huge deal, because look around at what we're seeing around the nation as federal district court judges have been slapping injunctions on Trump, impeding his progress. Who sits on the bench is a big, huge deal. And who sits on the bench on the federal side is an appointment by the president with a confirmation by the Senate. And once they're appointed for, on the federal district court bench, they're appointed for what's known as life or good cause, meaning they can stay there until they die or until they retire or until they're removed for a good cause, meaning they're going to be there a long time. They're not running for office. Once they're confirmed, they're in, man. So you got to hope you find the right ones. Well, what I know of these people is nothing but good. Trump nominated Edmund LaCour, Solicitor General for Alabama. He's been working in the Attorney General's office now for a number of years. He's been the one who argues cases on behalf of the state of Alabama. He's now going to be being nominated for confirmation as a U.S. District Judge for the Northern District. That's North Alabama where we are. Harold Moody, a private attorney in Huntsville, working for the Bradley Arant firm, U.S. District Judge for the Northern District. And then Supreme Court Justice Bill Lewis is coming off the Supreme Court of Alabama to be appointed to be a U.S. District Judge for the Middle District. All right, that's a big deal. Tuberville and Britt are the ones who submit the names to the president. The president then either accepts them or asks for additional names. He accepted all 3 and made a statement that he was proud to receive them and nominate them for these appointments. So listen, as you've watched what's happened around the nation, Trump taking back the federal bench and putting in place people that will actually rule according to the law. More of that, please. Thank you very much. All right, we're taking a break right now. I'll come right back and I'll tell you, looking northward, what's going on with the run for governor in Tennessee. Marsha Blackburn, where's she polling at? I will tell you. Phil Williams
Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Right.
And they're going to be slightly further out in terms of their restricted fire areas. Where the Blackhawks are being used, and honestly, hindsight being 2020, it wasn't a great way to do this, and it's not being done anymore, at least not in urban environments. They were being used as for both the miniguns, which I don't think they used the miniguns a lot, but they had snipers on board. So it's a great stable platform for the shooter, but it's a 50-something foot long target for people on the ground that have weapons. Mm-hmm. And you can't fly fast, because if you're flying fast, your shooter can't hit anything. So the speed is less than what you would fly if you were, just trying to avoid fire. We're probably flying 50 knots, right? Which may seem fast to someone on the ground, but that's really slow for an aircraft. Mm-hmm. And it makes the aircraft much more vulnerable to ground fire.
And how far above ground were you?
Very low. I mean, the Blackhawks had to stay 150 feet and below.
Okay.
And the Little Birds, I think, were 300 feet and above, which worked out great. I mean, we'd done it, at that point, probably 50 times counting rehearsals, and never had any close calls in terms of mid-airs.
Were you just flying racetracks?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we had, when I was in Baghdad in 2004, I can remember being on a cordon and search mission in Sadr City area, and they had changed all the TTPs because the racetracks got predictable, apparently, for ground fire, and so they were flying figure eights, and they were also altitude changes, and they had gone through all kinds of machinations to try and make sure the bad guys on the ground didn't have a predictable means of assessing, where the flight was going to be.
Right. Now, my flight, because I'm not one of these 4 aircrafts over the target. I've already gone in and I put my guys on the ground, but I took my flight north of the city for exactly what you're talking about. And one of the guys criticized me. He said, "Hey, we need to stay closer to target so we can see what's going on." And I'm like, "No, we're a contingency force at this point. I'm going north of the city where there's no threat, because if we're just doing circles up there, why would I want to be right here in the middle of this fight and put our entire flight at risk?" And it was obviously the right decision to do what I decided to do. So I've got my flight and I'm north of the city. Now, north of the city is not a long distance. It's probably a mile.
Right.
And we're up there orbiting, basically on standby. I mean, when you got assets like that, if you could keep them on hand as a ground force, keep them on hand, right? Because you never know when you might need some kind of helo support. And then I get called back in when the first Blackhawk gets shot down.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So you were flying what, Super 6-4?
Right.
And Super 6-1, your friend Donovan, right?
Right.
So he's the first one to go down.
And Cliff Walcott.
Yeah, and Cliff Walcott. And then you were, I think you were directed in to replace him.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, we didn't have a sniper on board. So we're going in simply to use our minigun down close to try to provide fire support for the guys on the ground. That's what our mission has now become, which that was not our mission prior to that. But again, you adapt and you do what needs to be done to try to help the force that you're supporting.
And you've got a full crew?
4, yeah. 2 crew chiefs and 2 pilots.
All right, so Super 6-1 is down. What do you remember about Super 6-1, hearing it over the air, and recognizing that one of them's already down?
Yeah, I mean, I've always called myself an eternal optimist. It never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that Cliff and Donovan would be dead. I just assumed that, they took a round, they're going down, they're going to land the aircraft somewhere, we'll get them recovered, and we'll all go debrief this thing when this is over. But obviously now we've lost a bird, which is the first time that this happens for us. There had been another Blackhawk shot down by 10th Mountain Division previously with some fatalities, but it wasn't our unit. And it, I've always used the phrase "big sky, little bullet." You don't think it can necessarily happen to you until there's enough volume of fire where it's going to happen to you. And there's also a search and rescue bird shot down in the middle of all this that then heightens that even more, because now they've shot down 2 aircraft in about 5 minutes, and we're going into this fray. This is getting real, really fast. And, I remember telling the crew chiefs, because I've got control of their guns from up front. So I've got an arming switch. And I armed the guns, and I said, "Okay, you're armed, but we got friendlies all over the ground down here. So we can't go in here just blasting away. You know, when we see bad guys, we got to get situationally aware so we know where all of our forces are before you start launching 6,000 rounds a minute downrange.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in an urban environment, I don't want to say it's impossible, but right on the rooftops, it's really difficult to sort all that out. Because first of all, they're all taking cover. So, you know, they're not standing out there waving at you. They're all taking.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. All right, listen, a bunch of y'all are texting in. I'll catch up with those here in a little bit. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Let me do a little bit more of what I like to call cooking up a batch of home fries. Oh, yeah. You can smell them cooking in the pan. All right, so I'm cooking up home fries right now. Here's one for you for our Tennessee audience. Marsha Blackburn is indeed running for governor of the state of Tennessee. I hold a document here in my calloused former paratrooper hands from the Tennessee Lookout. U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn has been polled out as holding a significant lead, I would expect no less. Holding a significant lead over U.S. Representative John Rose in the 2026 Republican primary. Blackburn is very popular in her home state. She's popular here in Alabama, for that matter. Blackburn has done a great job. She and Tuberville, in my opinion, are going to be missed. Their votes are going to be missed in the Senate. The question is who will get to replace them. But right now, both of them are coming home with the idea of being, instead of one of 100, being one of one as the governors of their states. This Beacon poll gives Blackburn a 68-14 advantage. Jeez, Pete. I mean, the old joke that I always say is you could poll, do you love your mama, and not get 68%. But Blackburn is polling at 68% to U.S. Representatives John Rose so far. Now, there's another old saying that a week is a lifetime in politics, and they got lots of weeks between now and the primary. So I think right now, though, the odds-on favorite is going to be Marsha Blackburn, just like Tommy Tuberville. Now, Tuberville has no competition for the most part. I don't know if, the sitting Congressman John Rose is actually going to be stiff competition, but right now he's only polling 14%. So there's that. Switch of subjects. Alabama Daily News has a piece here. I could have chosen this from a variety, but I was trying to spread it out. But Alabama Daily News has a piece. You may recall that Kent Davis was the director of the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. Retired Navy Admiral Kent Davis was summarily dismissed by Governor Ivey's office. I say Governor Ivey's office because I've never seen Governor Ivey speak about it. I leave that there for you to consider. That being said, Governor Ivey took issue with him taking issue with things that he thought were not being done well, and he filed an ethics complaint against another Department of Mental Health. I believe it was Secretary Buckner, and wanted something done about the fact that he felt like dollars that had been attributed to the VA were not coming to the VA. Seems like he's defending his territory, doing what veterans need done, and yet Ivey terminated him. He has now filed a suit. He has filed a wrongful dismissal suit against the governor's office, and the governor's office just filed a motion to dismiss. Now, where does it stand? Okay, lawyer Phil talking for a minute. Motion to dismiss may or may not be granted. I will tell you that unless they have absolute grounds for dismissal that is so uncontrovertible that the judge can't ignore it, most judges are what I would call loath to dismiss a case because, generally speaking, the law favors people having their day in court. Now, if the evidence comes up later, you can go through the depositions and the discovery and do all the things and then have enough evidence in your hands to present to the judge, Your Honor, you can do what's called a motion for summary judgment right now. And you can summarily rule there's no genuine issue of material fact left, Judge. You can rule right now. And that can happen later. I don't know that we're going to see a dismissal of this case unless the basis upon which the case has been filed is just not able to be sustained. But right now, what I do know is the governor's being sued by one of her former cabinet members, and that does not happen all the time. That's rather new and novel. Last thing I got for you. Now, listen, if you're not familiar, by the way, I'll tell you this. There is already an ICE detention facility in Alabama. You know why I know it? Because it's right here in my county. ICE has got a major detention facility here in Etowah County. They've had it for years. When I was in the state Senate, the ICE detention facility was going gangbusters. I want to say at one point they had up to 700 prisoners there. It's literally part of our jail building. The jail building in Etowah County is state of the art, and it is something like 7 stories tall. And the upper floors are all ICE detention. Department of Homeland Security had a contract with us. Under the Biden administration, guess what? They let the contract go. Why would that be? Because they weren't detaining nobody. That's why. That being said, we are in a different world. Now we're in the age of the Speedway Slammer and the Alligator Alcatraz. Well, guess what, Tennessee? You're getting one. So Core Civic, which this is going to tick the libs off. Core Civic is one of those for-profit jail companies, which the libs believe is something akin to Nazism. The end of times, if you will. How dare you get paid for a prison? Well, it's called a public-private partnership. Thank you very much. It means we don't have to have state employees. We just pay them a fee and they house them. And they have to do it according to standards that we set. All right. I've never had a real problem with this, but the bottom line is Core Civic is now going to run a new detention center near Mason, Tennessee. 600-bed facility. It's been sitting empty for 4 years. It's just sitting there. Core Civic built it. Nobody wanted to use it. Now, all of a sudden, ICE shows up and says, hey, what do you got? We got a place. We got 600 beds. Do you? Guess what? 600 beds that have been sitting empty for 4 years are suddenly going to wind up being an economic boon to the little town of Mason, Tennessee. And of course, the chanting protesters have now showed up at the small town hall. Mayor Eddie Noman stressed the economic opportunities for cash-strapped Mason and his own status as even being an immigrant from Egypt. How about that? He said, I agree. He said, maybe I agree or disagree. At the end of the day, I'm looking for the benefit of the town of Mason, he said. A few Mason residents voiced their support, but this particular detention center is less than 20 minutes away from schools and things, and somehow that means it's going to be dangerous. Well, these are not hardened criminals. These are going to be detention center folks waiting on their ability to catch the flight home, if you know what I'm saying. So there you go. You have a roundup of what's happening in your backyard. That's a batch of home fries, my friends. Got a bunch of text messages. I will catch up with them momentarily, but don't forget, coming up after the next break, we're going to jump on in to the Grand Council. We do it every Wednesday at the beginning of third hour. Grand Council, Jeff Poor and our friend Scott Buttram, who just walked into the studio. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
So trying to figure out where everybody was would have probably taken us a while. In the end, we only made it around 3 times when we got nailed by an RPG.
So RPG to the tail rotor, right?
Right.
In the movie, and later I want to get your thoughts on the movie, like I said, but in the movie, there's a scene where you took the RPG to the tail rotor, but initially you thought it was going to be okay until you started getting some play in the pedals and stuff like that. So what were your first thoughts, and how did that I mean?
Well, I knew we were hit, and I always tell people if you want to know what it feels like, drive too fast in a parking lot and hit a speed bump. That's what it felt like. It felt like a jolt to the airframe because you don't see it. Usually what they were doing is they let us fly by and then they emerge from the doorway and shoot. So you're probably not going to see the launch. The crew chief might see it depending if they're looking in the right direction. And then the reason they hit both of us in the tail is they're not leading us enough. So that 50-knot magical speed was just ballistically perfect for them to shoot at I'm sure they're aiming for center mass.
Which the crazy thing is an RPG is not usually designed to take out aircraft.
No, I mean, but if you fire enough of them, eventually, they say they fired 150 at us on that mission. Now, not just at me, but on that mission. That's how many RPGs.
I never heard that. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they went all in. They thought we want to bring down a helicopter, and they were successful. So anyway, back to your question. Initially, I feel like I hit a speed bump, knew we were hit. I can see the airfield. It's 2 miles ahead of us. And looking in the cockpit, everything's okay. Controls were all responding. But what had happened was the gearbox had been blown apart. And, it's like a transmission in your car, right? If you blow your transmission apart,
you ain't go anywhere.
Not for very long. Once those gears, run without oil for any period of time, they're going to self-destruct. And that's what happened. And then when the tail rotor left the aircraft, again, that's impossible to describe. If you haven't experienced it, I can't describe it. I mean, it's just violent spin of the aircraft, out of control.
What do they call that? Counter rotation or something, where you're trying to restore stability?
Well, the tail rotor is there to counter the torque of the main rotor system. Again, if you think about a drill, people are familiar with that. You pull the trigger, you can feel it want to turn. That's torque. So the same thing's happening to a helicopter, obviously with a lot more force. The tail rotor is mounted horizontally to push against that force that's wanting the airframe to spin. Once that tail rotor is gone, there's nothing. So essentially, if you were left unaffected by anything else, what would eventually happen is the airframe, minus wind drag, obviously, would be spinning as fast as the rotor blades are in the opposite direction. Yeah. That's essentially once it reached equilibrium. That will never happen, but that's how much force you're talking about here. And I remember looking at my feet, trying to convince myself, you're doing the right thing in terms of which pedal you're pushing, but it is having no effect on the aircraft. And then I'm like, okay, we lost the tail rotor. You know, again, this is something, you can't train that. There's no, you can't do it in a simulator. I mean, we can do a loss of tail rotor in a simulator, but you can't do the violent effects, the physical violent effects of the airframe in a simulator. But I knew what had happened, and the only thing you can do is shut the engines off, because again, that's what's creating that torque. So if you can remove that force, it'll stop that spin, but now you have no engines. Yeah. So that's not good either, especially at low altitude. But it's what you have to do. You can't possibly maintain control of the aircraft if it's just spinning out of control. So in a Black Hawk, we don't have control of the engines on the flight controls. So the co-pilot or the non-flying pilot has to shut the engines off. So I looked over at Ray and I said, "We lost the tail. We better pull them off." And he knew he was an experienced guy. I actually had more experience than I did, and pulled the engines off. But we're spinning so fast that he said, and we talked about it on the ground afterwards, typical instructor pilots. He said, we're spinning so fast, the centrifugal force was causing him to not be able to lift his arms up over his head, which is where the engine power control levers are. So he got one to idle and got one about halfway off, which slowed the spin but didn't stop it. And now, with no engine power, we're falling out of the sky like a Coke machine. And all I could do is try to keep the aircraft from flipping upside down, which, again, I don't know if anything I did made a difference, honestly, but all I can tell you is we crashed right on the wheels. And that's the only reason I'm still here.
All right, so you're on impact. Now, you said something on the ground. Did Ray make it?
Yeah,
okay.
We all survived the crash.
Okay.
The crew chiefs were hurt really bad because they don't, first of all, they don't have as good as seats, at least in that version of the aircraft. It's been improved since. And they're probably not strapped in, meaning, they operate on what we call monkey harnesses back there.
Yeah.
So they're on a strap, but they're not strapped into their seats, which have all the crash survivability.
I use those as a jump master in Blackhawks
because it allows you to move around and do the things you need to do. And you get in the seat when you have to land. Well, they didn't. Obviously, we're not planning to land, so they're probably not strapped in, or at least not likely that they're both strapped in. So, that violent crash, they were probably not going to make it. But Ray, I mean, he was not hurt as bad as I was. And we're talking, once I regained consciousness, we're talking about what happened, and there was no reason to talk about what happened. We should have been talking about, hey, the heck, we're going to survive the next 5 minutes here. But we did, and that's when he explained what he had tried to do. And then he was able to get himself out of the cockpit. There's no way I could get out. I had a femur fracture, crushed vertebrae in my spine. It's hard to get out of a Black Hawk cockpit when you're healthy. Mm-hmm. With those injuries, there's no way. So I just thought, I'm just going to fight it out from the cockpit.
I did not recall that your co-pilot had made it, but they didn't survive. Am I correct?
Well, they were killed in a firefight.
Yeah, they're all killed in the firefight. Yeah, I remember that now. All right, you're still stuck in the cockpit. I remember, I'm assuming it was when I read it, that you had a kind of an off the books weapon. Didn't you have an MP5 or something like that? Mm-hmm. Was that standard issue, or was that
for us?
Yeah, was okay.
Yeah, we used the MP5. They don't use it anymore, I don't think. But that was our we had an M9 pistol and an MP5.
So you wind up having to engage targets yourself while you're on the ground in the cockpit?
Actually, not from the cockpit. That's one area where Black Hawk Down deviates from what actually happened. I mean, I did consult a little bit on the movie, but really not much. I guess if they're going to exaggerate something and make you look better than you actually were, that's a good thing. But yeah, they have me, blasting away from the cockpit. It was amazing how quick
the dude just said. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on Hump Day. Yeah, so you are halfway to the weekend, my friends, and we heard the camel play at the beginning of the show, which means that the signal is given now to bring in the Grand Council at the beginning of third hour. So we got a substitute right now for us. The Dale Jackson guy is not here today. So sitting in studio with me, often known as the Secretary of Common Sense, the polished pundit of publishing, that would be one Scott Buttram is here. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Always good when you're in studio, man. I get a kick out of it. All right. Hey, by turning my way southward, let me just go ahead and say from FM Talk 1065, host of the Jeff Poor Show. Oh, by the way, 1819 News' editor-in-chief, does stuff with Breitbart, Lanyap, and whatever else. That would be Jeff Poor. Are you there?
I am present.
You are indeed. All right. I call a quorum. Hit it.
Assemble the Grand Council.
Ta-da! All right. I'm going to go ahead and say honored guest, Secretary of Common Defense or Common Sense. We turn to you for the first question. What do you got?
My question is for both of you. How shocked were you to see that Caroline Dobson got the BCA endorsement?
Jeff, you can take it first if you want to. Caroline Dobson, who ran for Congress, just got the BCA endorsement for Secretary of State. Go ahead.
No, I'm not shocked at all. But I'm going to tell you, I was talking to a well-placed Politico last evening, and there's a notion, there's a sentiment. They think that, and I disagree with this wholeheartedly, that Andrew Sorrell will drop out of this race. And she will be anointed Secretary of State. I don't think that's the case at all. They just don't know him that well. But they're sort of a permanent Montgomery thinks that.
If there were anybody else.
Yeah,
that
doesn't feel like part of his DNA. I would actually be shocked if that happened, to be honest with you. I think that Andrew Sorrell is the kind of guy who's going to stay in the mix, and he's got his own pack, and he's got the ability to do that. He could fund his own race, if I understand correctly. But the bottom line, Caroline Dobson is not a bad candidate. I don't mind her, but the BCA endorsing her clearly indicates to me that I think it was less about them loving Caroline Dobson, more about the fact that they're worried about Andrew Sorrell. And I don't know what they think he's going to go jimmy up that scares the BCA, the Business Council of Alabama. Do you, Jeff?
It might be an investment for the future. They want to build her up, and they want to make her sort of their an ally for the future. Has got a lot of political upside, maybe.
Okay. So you think this is a long-term investment?
There are a lot of people that see her as the next Katie Britt. The difference is Katie Britt was very organic. This feels a lot more forced. I think she's a good person, but it just feels a little more forced.
Organic. That's a great way of putting it. It was not hard at all to believe that Katie Britt was going to be where she is right now. Caroline Dobson is having a scratch and claw. She already lost one race.
Right.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Jeff Rowe, what you got for the next question, buddy?
How would we feel? And this was brought up on my radio show. We're watching this DC crackdown by the Trump administration, and I know that the District of Columbia has a different set of circumstances, different rules they have to live under because it's constitutional. But how would we feel if the Trump administration looked at other cities, including Birmingham or Montgomery, and did something similar?
Well, since the state legislature almost did it to Birmingham last year, I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. You're right. They are an entirely different batch of the law. 1973, they passed the DC Home Rule Act. And so that's when DC finally got some measure of self-governance. They've only had it for 50 years and they've been botching it ever since. But I look at this and think, if you have to send the National Guard out to LA to stop riots because the mayor won't do it, if you have to go into DC and bring federal law enforcement and National Guard because the mayor won't do it, if you have to go to Chicago one day, or if you have to go to Birmingham, as long as these are temporary assertions of, like putting a surge of law enforcement on the street, I don't mind, especially if the locals, and by the way, local law enforcement in DC is applauding this effort. They are so glad to have the help. So I think what you have to look at is not how, pundits might feel. It's going to be, how do the citizens and the local law enforcement feel about it? And right now they love it. What you think, man?
Well, I'm not so sure Trump hadn't done a little of that already. We've talked about Birmingham and the crime, and suddenly it's improving dramatically. And is this really the Birmingham police suddenly finding themselves and homicide rates falling 50%? Or are they getting some help? I've been told that they are getting significant state and federal help.
Yeah.
In fact, I didn't watch the mayoral debate for the city of Birmingham last night, but I am told that one of the candidates was pretty pointed about it. The state taking over law enforcement in the city of Birmingham. And I don't think there was a whole lot of pushback. So I'm not sure it hasn't happened at some level. Now, the National Guard showing up in uniform to support law enforcement. They don't need a map around Birmingham. They've been here before.
They know their way around.
They know their way around.
Yeah, they just get the box out and refresh.
That's right. The names have changed, but nothing else.
Well, since Wallace has left, they have finished the interstates in Birmingham.
That is true. That is true. All right, your own question though, Jeff. What do you think? How would you, as a news guy in Alabama, feel about it?
I mean, as a news guy, if it deteriorates, Birmingham is bad, but it's not DC bad. So I will first say that. But I guess my hope would be that it never got to that, because you're right, Scott. I mean, I think like other cities will see what's going on in DC, and they don't want that happening to them.
Right.
Yeah.
So they had to do their politics, and they had to pretend to be outraged, and this cannot stand. This authoritarian orange-haired man cannot do this. But deep down, they're very pro. I think getting federal help.
I think they are too.
I do too.
And I'll be honest with you. I grew up in West Birmingham. A lot of my growing up, my grandparents lived in Inslee, Wylam, all that area that you just don't go walk around at night anymore. I mean, the neighborhood where I ran barefooted with my cousins is not a place where I would walk in the daytime now.
Same.
And
Same.
it's a crying shame, but nonetheless, this is a temporary surge, but it's also working. All right, let me do one more question before you hit the break time. So the U.S. Senate race for Alabama. So we got a poll that came out recently. I think this was a BCA Signal poll, if I'm not mistaken. And right now, Steve Marshall, as expected, is polling the highest, somewhere around 25%. Jared Hudson down around 3%. Barry Moore was somewhere around 9%. And they even polled Bruce Pearl, who's not even in the race, and he had like second highest at 13.9. Here's my question for you. Are we looking at a runoff? And we are a long way out, and I know it. But are we looking right now at a field that has three pretty attractive candidates right now? And Name ID is still struggling for Jared Hudson, and Barry Moore is only known in part of the state, really. But are we looking at a potential runoff, or can Steve Marshall pull ahead that far that he doesn't have to worry about it? You first, Jeff.
No, absolutely gonna have a runoff. There'll be more candidates in, a lot of pretenders, some people with some money to spend. They'll take some votes. It's hard for me to see Steve Marshall getting the 50% +1 under these circumstances.
All right. What do you think?
I agree. I think the numbers will probably force a runoff. I do think Marshall has the inside track if he can hold it. But like Jeff said, we're going to see more candidates. You never know how these things are going to play out. When we looked at Britt, Brooks, and the military guy,
Jared Hudson.
That ran against Katie
Mike
Britt.
Durant.
Oh, Mike Durant. Yeah.
As that race went along, I think all three candidates at one point were pretty much in the lead.
Yeah. I think Mike Durant was up at one point.
Yeah.
And then Mo Brooks was strong and had the Trump endorsement. Right. And then all of a sudden Katie Britt surges.
Yeah. And in the end, it was a pretty decisive victory by Britt. I would not have predicted that even 2 months out. So
yeah, that's a good point. Well, I said it earlier on the show, a week is a lifetime in politics. We got a lot of weeks between now and the primary, but right now, all right, let me quick. I got about 45 seconds. You got any names out there for these people you think are still going to jump in the race, Jeff?
No, there's a bunch of people flirting with it. I don't think it's anybody serious or anybody we've heard of that's a household name in Alabama. But I mean, it could be a former lawmaker or something like that that will get in, maybe a vanity run, have maybe 50 grand to spend, but they'll go to everything or whatever. It won't be like a John Merrill or somebody like that of that stature.
Will it be a calculated spoiler or somebody who really thinks they can do it?
Somebody who wants to show their mom they became something important by being on a ballot, I guess.
Wow, there's a reason to run. Hey, Mom, watch the news. All right, we're taking a break. That's round one of the Grand Council. We're sitting here with Jeff Poor and Scotty Buttram in studio, and just a little OB, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Gary Gordon and Randy Sugar got to the cockpit. There were no Somalis there yet, and that's why I hadn't fired any rounds. I had my MP5. I was ready to go, but nobody had showed up. And then all of a sudden, Gary and Randy are standing next to the cockpit, and I'm like, wow, this is over. There's a rescue force here.
Which is an amazing story in itself. I mean, both of them wound up with the Medal of Honor posthumously, but I recall reading that they both requested 7 times to be put on the ground, knowing full well that there was only going to be 2 of them and no telling how long till any guys in the Rangers got there.
You're right about all of that. And again, I only know about it secondhand because obviously I'm not on the aircraft with them. But they were told initially no, and eventually convinced the leadership that if they were not let in, we were lost. And you don't know what's in the mind of someone else, but they had to know, hey, this is going to be dicey at a minimum, because it took 8 hours for another American to get to our crash site.
Yeah, which is crazy when you think about the fact that as you were going down, you could see the airfield roughly 2 miles away, and yet it took 8 hours for anybody to get there.
And it's because, well, we were resource constrained, and there were so many things happening. You had 6-1's crash site, you had the convoy, you had the target, now you had my crash site. So really, the commander's got 4 things that he's got to deal with, and he didn't even really have the resources for one.
By the way, I'm going to chase a rabbit real quick. I don't know if you heard this yet, but the whole base renaming thing that happened.
I was going to bring this up
about Gary Gordon.
Yeah. And it's a brilliant solution. And I just read it a couple days ago.
Yeah. For those who don't know, that Fort Gordon was one of the names that nobody knew was apparently tied to a Confederate. I didn't know that Benning was. I didn't know that Rucker was. I just went and trained there, as I'm sure you probably did. But Fort Gordon got renamed to something, but Fort Gordon's getting its name back for your rescuer, Gary Gordon.
Right.
Yeah. That's I think that's pretty. Now we got to find a Fort Shugart somewhere.
Yeah. They might have to create one. Yeah.
What do you recall about Shugart and Gordon being on the ground? I mean, I've read their story separately. I've read it in your book, but give me and the listeners, when they got on the ground and were talking, what were your thoughts? What was the conversation?
It was brief, purely mission focused. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They knew, hey, look, we got to get him out of the cockpit, meaning me, because I'm too vulnerable there. I'm sitting up, basically up off the ground, elevated, and so that was one of the primary things they wanted to get done, is get me out of there, and then essentially, as well as I could, set up a perimeter. Now, the way the geography of this crash site was, there was a wall right to the right. The nose is pointing forward as I'm sitting here, and there's a wall right to the right. Now, it's just a corrugated tin wall, basically, but still, there's no way for someone to access the site from there. So I believe their decision was, we're going to go secure the left side, put me on the right, and that is in fact where the attack primarily came from, was the left side. So I can hear it, and then I could see Somalis, onesie twosies. I fired all the rounds in my weapon at the Somalis that tried to come in on the right side, but the bulk of the attack came from the left side.
How long was Shugart and Gordon in the mix? I mean, how long until they were actually taken?
It's hard to say. I know there's an official timeline somewhere. I honestly don't recall. Time is so hard to judge when things are in that state of chaos. I would say probably 10 minutes, maybe 15, from the time they showed up to the side of the aircraft to, Gary went down first, and at that point, Randy's almost out of ammunition already. And he came around and he asked me where the crew chief's weapons were, and I told him, and he went in, grabbed one, And then he gave me what I believe was Gary's weapon, which still had rounds in it, because I had fired all the rounds out of my MP5. And then he went around the nose of the bird. He made a quick radio call, and we were told on the radio that a reaction force was en route. Again, cause for a little bit of optimism here. Yeah. And then he went and made his last stand on the other side.
Were 160th aircraft overhead? I mean, were you getting any kind of air cover at all when you were down?
Well, we're not getting any air cover, but that call that he made that call on what we call the fire net, meaning it's a fire support net. So he's talking to attack little birds probably. And I think I recognize the voice of the guy who answered him that said a reaction force is en route. So they're overhead. But again, you're talking 4 targets here, and the commander's got to put
he's got triage
his assets where they can do the most good. And right now, that's the main target and 6-1, because 6-1 was close to the main target. The convoy's too fluid. It's all over the place. And then we are, unfortunately, just a couple guys that, and I don't.
It's out of politics.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right, just saving the world, one soundbite at a time. All right, we're back for round 2 of the Grand Council with Scott Buttram and Jeff Poor and little old me. So I'm going round 2. First question, Scott Buttram, what do you have?
Getting away from politics a little bit, but not much, since I'm on the radio with 2 of my friends from Auburn, and I don't have many friends from Auburn, so I'll throw this out. Read a story in 1819 News today that I found encouraging, but my question to you guys is: Am I overconfident or overly joyed about a decision by Auburn to phase out the test optional admissions, which I think was something we were going to see that was going to lead to the further degradation of our universities, where we're ignoring curriculum and worried more about woke, and anybody can come to college these days. I was really proud to see Auburn say, we're not playing that game anymore. Go take your SAT, go take your ACT.
Well, I think it's a combination. So for those who don't know, test optional basically means like the ACT, the SAT, Auburn was saying, we don't have to have any interest requirements. You want to go to school here, pay your money. And it was a DEI push is what it was. And Jeff, you can jump in on that if I got it wrong, but my understanding is they were literally just saying all y'all are income free, and it had no standard attached to it. And now they're getting back to standards, which is the way it should be.
It was an idea to make it easier for minorities to attend Auburn or be accepted to Auburn, I should say. Well, the standardized tests are race, they're not race based in a fair way, where an African American student in his upbringing and his world experiences, it really comported with him, and that was an unfair advantage too. And it was always something, along those lines, but it was really just, hey, we need to get our demographic numbers a little bit better to show that we don't hate black people. So here's what we're going to do.
Everybody can come in.
Which winds up just crushing their standards, though, because if people who come in that shouldn't be in college and then they can't pass the courses, you have to either A, lower the standards of the courses, or B, have a fail rate that nobody wants as part of their ledger.
Or C, and what they probably did was give out fake diplomas, pretending they've actually gained.
Been doing that in football at Auburn for years.
Hey. Well, you're a War Eagle, but anyway. So I mean, the bottom line is, I think it was a combination of they saw the handwriting on the wall, they were being pushed towards it. The DEI move, or anti-DEI move by the Trump administration is out there. The Department of Education is hammering people on it. But the other piece of this is they also just realized it was bad form, and even culture doesn't want that anymore. Jeff, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good move. They needed to feel some heat on that, and slowly Auburn got out in the left ditch. I don't know. It used to be one of the most conservative schools. It used to have a saying that there were more Baptists at Auburn University than at Baylor, a Baptist college, and it was just understood. And then the last 20 years, they started meddling and some of these professors stuck around or whatever, and I think finally you kind of see the Auburn University is responding. They're late to the game, but University of Alabama was ahead of them on this and saying, hey, we need to knock this off.
Okay, so the Iron Bowl of DEI has now occurred.
Yeah, I mean, what Jeff just said, I just want to reiterate.
Well,
that.
with a caveat here, the University of Alabama system still has UAB in it,
Right.
which is just totally
that's true.
That kills them. But
they wake up and violate state law.
But the University of Alabama system is sort of like trying to like put some distance between that. They know the legislature does not approve of this. The legislature will cut their funding. The legislature they will in a politically reactionary way do something to them punitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Auburn and Alabama are trying to prevent.
I agree.
Well, hanging over their heads. Auburn was always kind of the bastion of conservatism to me. That was the institution that always kind of said, and what Jeff said, over the last 10 or 20 years, I'm going, what is going on down there? Y'all were the ones we could depend on. I was delighted to see them make the move back, but
I agree.
Shouldn't have ever gone that way to begin with.
Jeff, take the next question, man. What you got?
This is probably more for Scott than you, Senator, but does Randall Woodfin have really anything to worry about?
Well, I heard there was a debate last night. How did Wandling Gavan do? Does she have some good soundbite moments?
Well, I've not seen the whole thing. I saw a few clips. I intend to watch the entire thing tonight. We had political forums at the Tribune. All of the candidates, as Joseph Bryant said, had their arrows sharp and were firing at the same target. So Woodfin took incoming all night, from what I understand. It's so wild when you have this many people in a race. Anything could happen. My short answer is I think Gavan can beat him. I do. I don't think Scales will be a threat, but I think Gavan, if the circumstances line up right, could definitely beat him. I've said they got 99 neighborhoods in Birmingham. Woodfin's got about 6 of them. She got the other 93. So I think she could win.
Wow. All right. Well,
which would be good for Montgomery.
Yeah, it would.
Don't know about Birmingham.
I don't know if the population of Birmingham can sustain that much longer. Then again, how many pairs of glasses and wigs can you wear when you're mayor? I don't know. Quick thought on that, Jeff?
Well, I would say this. I'm going to stick up for Wandling Gavan. She's crazy and she's wrong on a lot of things. But I think I don't think
you stick up for her.
I am. I just kind of seeing where she comes from and knowing how the House of Representatives operates too. And you don't have a lot of courage in that chamber at all, especially from some Republican members who know that they're getting the short shrift from the leadership there. Yeah. And she gets it. She gets it. She will. She'll make a fool of herself, but at least she has the courage to do so, where some of her Democratic colleagues aren't willing to do that.
I've watched it firsthand. She's willing to make a fool of herself. You're right.
I think Birmingham people will. I think at this point they're looking at Woodfin going, listen, dude, you've been all talk for 10 years. We're never going to move under you.
Yeah.
It was all a little charade.
Well, they shrunk under his watch. They shrunk from being the top city in the state to being the third, almost fourth.
Yeah, they'll be fourth for you.
It's been just a flight of like population right out of the city limits.
Set homicide records last year. I mean,
it's unbelievable.
In the murder capital of Alabama, they set a homicide record.
It's unbelievable. Listen, I'm not going to get my last question in because that was good dialogue. But Jeff Poor from 1819 News and FM Talk 106.5 down in Mobile. Appreciate you, brother. Also, sitting right here in the studio with me, Scotty Buttram. Always pleasure to have you, my friend, from the Trustful Tribune. And thank you very much for being here.
Good to be in. Thank you.
All right. We're taking a break. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
Guys are faulting for this. He's resource constrained. He's only got so much he can do. We were kind of left on our own.
Left on your own for how long? Do you recall? I mean, do you have a rough timeline of how long you were there?
Well, when Gary and Randy went down, it's 15 minutes. It's over. They overran the site. Yeah.
Which I'm on the one hand sounds like nothing, but it's also an eternity, I'm sure, when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you there, and I'm going to be asking you some questions. Your book is extremely descriptive about some things that happened in those moments immediately after Gary and Randy went down, you talk about the fact that in the movie it shows it. You're there, you're by yourself. The crowd of Somalis finds you. And then somebody knocks you out. Now, in your book, you talked about it in more detail. They were trying to rip your boots off. And then there's this really odd moment where they were stripping your clothes off, and then they almost felt embarrassed, you said, and they kind of put your clothes back on you. Do you recall that moment?
Absolutely. It was very weird. I mean, they're stripping all my stuff off. And, of course, one of the issues here is got a compound femur fracture. So when they're trying to get my boot off, you know, my youngest played hockey, and when he was a kid, I always tied his skates and took his skates off. And every time I took his skates off, I thought about them trying to take my boot off.
Wow.
And because you never unlace it enough, right? And it's always going to be hard to get off. And at some point, my femur goes out the backside of my leg. And I believe it was because they were, again, just pulling on it, trying to get that boot off. And you know, obviously going back and forth, and finally it just punches through the back of my leg. That's the only explanation for when that could have happened in my mind. Maybe it happened later, earlier, I'm not sure. But anyhow, I can't feel anything at that point anyway. It's just overwhelming pain across the whole body. And then they're trying to get my survival gear off, and I used to make a joke about this. We didn't have regular survival gear that the regular Army units had. We had, you know, we called it ninja gear, and it had buckles on it that are like a water ski vest, right? You have to squeeze
the Fast Tex
little
buckles.
tangs together to get it to unbuckle. And I always used to say the Somalis don't water ski. So I actually had to help them get that off because, I mean, they're pulling and pulling and pulling. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll just undo the buckle. So I undid the buckle and they got it off. And they got me down to my brown T-shirt, which when you see the interrogation video, you can tell that I've still got that on, and my desert tan trousers. Now, they were going for the trousers, but because it's very humid there and we weren't taking a lot of showers, our flight surgeon said, you're probably better off not wearing underwear because it keeps you a little bit drier. So I was not wearing underwear. And they start taking my trousers off. And again, this is the only explanation I come up with. They realized that I'm about to be naked and changed their mind and stopped. And in the end, it had probably a benefit in that it provided a little bit of protection from the elements for that now open wound I had on my right leg. You know, otherwise it had been rubbing in the dirt. So again, just a whole bunch of little weird,
crazy
like
little
that.
surreal moments like that. Yeah. But one of the worst moments, and you said in your book, you actually had told yourself you were never going to tell that story until the book was actually put together. Later, you decided to do it. But at one point, one of the Somalis clubbed you with something, and later on, you remembered what it was. Do you mind talking about that?
Well, the reason, and here's the rationale. What happened at the crash site was unimaginable. I mean, I've been in combat before. I've seen people die before. I've been angry at the enemy before, but I never thought humans could do what they did. And I guess I wanted to protect the families of my comrades from knowing about this. So I sort of watered it down a little bit when I first talked about it, not knowing they're seeing bodies dragged through the streets. I didn't know that. I mean, it's on the front page of our newspaper at home. You know, the wife and kids of who we think is not conclusive evidence to indicate that it was one person versus another. There's probably three possibilities. But in their minds, that's dad, you know, or that's my husband. But I didn't know any of that. So I'm sort of trying to keep them from knowing that.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just, I mean, like, man, just covering down on major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This one, this show goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that lovely little village on the plains we call Auburn, and straight across the line from there to what we call, once again, Fort Benning. Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. Yeah. And that's just the radio. And then there's all y'all out there in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web and watching us live streaming the show, live streaming it. We can see the numbers, live streaming the show every day on places like X and YouTube and Rumble and Facebook. And oh, by the way, our website, rightsidemedia.org. And then, by the way, podcasters who catch it after the fact, all of you, every one of you, no matter where you get the show, I say all that kind of thing about our reach every day because I want you to know we recognize where you are, and the fact that you catch the show in whatever way you do means the world to us. So thank you very much. Thank you. Bunch of texts. Let me go ahead and catch up on some of those. Apparently they had a glitch up yonder in WVNN, our Huntsville affiliate, and it somehow flipped over to a hip hop or to a pop channel.
Yeah, pop.
Yeah. Well, I would said hip hop because it was on this text right here. It says, Phil, are you doing hip hop right now? That's what I'm hearing. Just kidding. Randy from Madison. We got it fixed.
Well, yeah, we decided to do a DJ hour actually where Phil was DJing some.
Waka, waka, waka,
Yeah.
waka.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I start beatboxing here. All right. But yeah, that got fixed. That was not us. That was the station. They got themselves squared away. Andy from Arab. Hey, Andy, hadn't heard from you in a while. Andy from Arab says the 82nd Airborne Division Association had our annual convention in Knoxville last week. Many older former paratroopers still in good shape. A lot of Jumpmaster wings and CIBs. Thank you again, sir, for being our Alabama chapter speaker several times. Andy, it's an honor, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's been a joy of mine. My grandfather was in the 82nd Airborne. I'm a paratrooper myself. And so twice they've had me out to speak at their association dinners, and just absolute, just salt of the earth group of paratroopers and their spouses. So thank you. Scott from Huntsville says, do you think the Democrats will take the Senate, the Tennessee and Alabama senators running for governor? This makes me concerned for the success of the Trump agenda. I don't. And I say that because those are red states. I think what they'll wind up having is a true Republican replacement. The question is how conservative they will be. But thus far, Marsha Blackburn and Tommy Tuberville have proven to be very conservative, have both had great voting records, and have both been willing to buck things and be a voice when necessary. And I've appreciated that about both of them. I hope we have somebody like that. Whoever it is, I still will believe will have an R by their name regardless. So stand by and watch for that. Jeremy from Madison says, by the way, I'll also step back and say this. I would bet that if that were not the case, they would not have run for governor because they realized what it would have done to the overall opportunities in D.C. They ran knowing that they could leave it in safe hands. Bernice from Tony says, I was driving and wondered what happened. Oh, she's talking about the thing. I was able to listen to the Captain's Club on BBN for a few minutes, and when it ended, you were back on. Okay. Glad. Thanks, Bernice. We have a brand new texter in the line named Kip from Morgan County. Kip says, read where the CEO of NPR is also, is that an old? That's old. Oh, he said, this is a third-party contractor to DHR, not a DHR employee. Doesn't matter. DHR still has authority over it. It's still a DHR responsibility. DHR is still on the hook. There may be a third-party contractor. It's a DHR contract. So that's where it stands. You can delegate your authority. You cannot delegate your responsibility. That's the rule. Nofre from Lexington says, the guy that was responsible for entering the crime data in Washington, D.C. is suspended. Why is he suspended? For falsely entering the numbers to make the crime not look so bad. You are correct, sir. That is one of the ones that we are watching to see where it goes. But right now, that certainly makes everything suspect, doesn't it? Joe in Tennessee says, no internet here on the ridge in the home country of the Klan, home county of the Klan. Oh, wow. Says WVNN is the reeking beacon of sanity. Being MAGA in an old Democratic stronghold is a struggle. Got you now. Thank you, Joe. That was quite the artful text.
That was in response to him,
Yeah.
upset we were off the air. But
yeah, suddenly they were listening to, I don't know, Taylor Swift or something. Shag Nasty, the atheist, checking in. Hey, Shag Nasty. Shag Nasty, what have you got? Said, what's our poorly reasoned fascist talking points today? Those weak, effeminate libs just screwing everything up like usual? Well, your words, not mine, Shag. I mean, I guess Shag wants to do the show now. He just kind of nailed it. Stephen from Athens, Alabama says, Phil, you know what Jeff said about handing out fake degrees to athletes is true for both Alabama and Auburn. Roll Tide. That's for JP.
Yeah, I think we got something in common there. But I think everybody does. I think it's fair.
I don't think Auburn ever did.
Well, no. I think if Jeff said it, who is one of the bigger Auburn fans I'm aware of, I think it's probably true.
Mark from Decatur says, he's telling us we're back on, and we knew that. Thank you very much, sir. John from Huntsville says, if you ever switch over to music, make it country. Okay. I don't think we will. You don't want me singing. I'm just saying. I can talk.
Maybe we need a karaoke segment.
But I do sound great in the car by myself.
Yeah, I think everybody does. I sound great in the shower. Yeah.
Oh
that's
yeah,
everybody.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I can belt it out.
I think about going on American Idol every now and then, but then
But you have to stand there in the shower on American Idol. That wouldn't
yeah,
work.
exactly.
All right, hey, listen, we're going to do something here for a minute. So I've got another sound clip. I'm going to go to that sound clip number 2. Can you pull that one and get it ready? Tell me when you're good. Senator Chris Coons. So the left is absolutely, this is my third dipper of the day, the war on woke. The left is absolutely out of their minds. There's nothing that Trump can say or do that's ever going to be good. Senator Chris Coons, you know what's odd? When Trump was elected in 2016, I went to the Congressional Prayer Breakfast in D.C. And at that particular prayer breakfast, what they do every year is one Democrat and one Republican are the ones who put together the event for that year. They chair the commission so it's a bipartisan event, and it's a prayer breakfast, and it's huge. I mean, we're talking thousands of people were there. I was in an overflow room, but I had the big screen to see what was happening in the big room. But at the prayer breakfast, I'll never forget, and I've got a picture somewhere, I think it's on my phone, of Senator Chris Coons putting his hands on Trump's shoulders and praying over him. I don't think he feels that way anymore. Chris Coons has become one of the biggest hacks on the Democrat side. And it's just embarrassing to watch. He says things that are not even grounded in reality. One of which is, I've got a sound clip of him. How long is this sound clip, by the way? Is it like 45 seconds?
I think it's a little over a minute.
A little over a minute. This is him doing an interview on Fox, claiming that Trump is trying to whitewash history and to wipe out any representation of black people. You know why they're doing this? Because Trump just recently said, hey, you know what? Smithsonian museums, I want to know that you've gotten all that wokeness out of there. We're not doing any more critical race theory exhibits. We're not doing any more transgender exhibits. We're not doing any more 1619 Project fake stories of American history exhibits. We're not going to highlight people because of just their race. We're going to highlight them because of their merit. And the left is having to come apart. Trump's trying to whitewash history. Well, no, but listen to what one of the apparently well-reasoned Democrats has to say about it. Go ahead and play it.
What's your take on this, that this was taken down?
Look, there are so many ways that President Trump and his administration are conducting culture wars against free speech, trying to rewrite history, trying to pressure law firms, universities, and museums in terms of what they present to our country about our history and who we are. I can understand why the Smithsonian might have updated that exhibit to reflect the fact that President Trump was impeached twice. And I'm glad that their statement now says that when the whole exhibit is updated in the future, they will include the truth that President Trump was impeached twice. But honestly, these efforts at whitewashing literally history are really disturbing. The actions that Secretary Hegseth took at the Department of Defense to go through the website that documents the incredible role in American military history played by Black and Latino members of our armed forces, the ways in which senior leaders were fired really solely because of their race or gender. This effort to change our history, our leadership, how we understand ourselves, how we engage with the world, I think is a distraction and in many ways harmful to Americans' understanding of who they are and of our history.
What a crock of crap. What an absolute farcical presentation. What an absolute batch of lies. Somebody name for me who was fired because of their race by Trump. Who? Have you looked at the demographics of his particular administration? You've got black, white, gay. You've got male, female. You've got Asian. Somebody please tell me who Trump fired because of their race. And then let's go back and talk about the whole idea that Pete Hegseth went through the military websites and removed any evidence of black people's heroics. That's such a crock of crap. What they said was, you're not going to highlight people because of their race. You're going to highlight them because of who they are and what they did. And so at one point there was somebody who was taken down and they quickly corrected it only because there was an error in the removal process. What they're looking at right now is saying things like, in the US military, We honor people's service and merit, and we are colorblind because the only color we need is green. And the left can't get by. You know why? Because the left needs identity politics. And if they can't get their identity politics, they'll tell you that you're whitewashing. They'll make you a racist. They will tell you that because you didn't spend enough time delving into race, that obviously you're somehow race phobic. It's absolutely asinine, and it's just got to stop.
Chris Coons doesn't actually believe anything he said, though.
I don't think he does.
He's one of those people, especially on the left, but there's some on the right too, that they just regurgitate what they're told to say. I could look in Chris Coons' eyes. He didn't believe a word he was saying. His eyes looked almost like lifeless, almost like he's been programmed to just regurgitate the Democrat talking points, and that's it. I think he just moves with the party where the party moves. We're saying this. Oh, Trump's whitewashing. Okay, yeah. There's no original thought behind the eyes of what I just saw with Chris Coons. So I think what you said, your experience with him at a prayer breakfast, was probably actually him. And now he's being programmed to say what the party is saying. So,
yeah. Well, I'd like to believe that was a real prayer. But yeah, somewhere I need to find that picture and probably post it on social media and say, "Hey, Chris Coons, is this you?"
Yeah.
But yeah. And oh, by the way, I got to correct one thing. That was an interview on CNN, not on Fox. Where I found it was on Fox talking about him saying it, but the interview was done on CNN. So there's that. But yeah, listen, I got a couple of more pieces here I might even get into. I've got one story that actually came from Fox. Really good piece. I hold it in my callous former paratrooper hands. That there are a group of both conservative and liberal scholars who just recently, like this week, published what they call a manifesto calling for an end to wokeness in the humanities. Love that. Basically, what they're saying is, let's get back to actual academic freedom. Let's stop telling people they have to have a warped production based upon an ideology. One person, a political science professor named Eric Kaufman, said, it made us dumber about the social world, not smarter. They call it the Buckingham Manifesto for Post-Progressive Social Science. There's a fancy name that just says, stop the wokeness now. It says, in the second 2 decades of the 21st century, academic and cultural institutions were suddenly seized by radical ideologies known as critical social justice, intersectionality, identity synthesis, and successor ideologies, or most commonly known as wokeness. It said the takeover took many by surprise and remains unexplained. We hold that the wokeness revolution was not compelled by new discoveries or moral imperatives. It was just a contingent historical episode that needs to be studied. No, it was populism. That's an amazing batch of verbiage, all of which would do you really well on a Scrabble board. But what it really means is even academics are saying, can we please just get rid of the wokeness? The war on woke is real, y'all, and it's working. We're taking a break. Last break of the day here on Hump Day. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
Horrific things happen. And then I get released and I see all this. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that this is already all out in the public domain. So that's when I decided, well, there's no harm in me telling what actually happened. And it was interesting to me that nobody had questioned it anyway, because if you got butt stroked, which is what I said was originally happened,
right,
with a rifle butt, hard enough to break your eye socket. I can still feel it right here. My eye socket was broken. My nose was broken, but there's no bruise. I mean, you're gonna bruise up if you get hit that hard by a rifle butt, right? And you can see in the interrogation video, there's no bruise.
Right.
But no one ever questioned that, and that's because it wasn't a rifle butt. I mean, and the best I can tell, it was a body part. I mean, it was very heavy and soft, like flesh, and that's why I always thought, well, it's just probably
like the
arm
or leg
of someone. Yeah, I mean that's the only explanation. But it was, again, hard for me to fathom that these people have turned so much against us. Because you mentioned George Bush earlier.
Yeah.
He visited Somalia before he left office.
Yeah.
And there were parades in the street for our presence there because we had brought stability. We had brought an end to the fighting. We had brought an end to the starvation. And they were big, big fans of the U.S. And here we are 10 months later, and they're doing this to us. I mean, you heard the quote, hearts and minds of the people. You can't lose the hearts and minds of the people any worse than that. I mean, that's as bad as it gets, to go from celebrating the fact that you're here, to desecrating the remains of my comrades and cutting people into pieces. I mean, it's just insane.
And desecrating the corpses. I mean, we saw a little bit of that in Baghdad. I mean, I wasn't there. I won't try to portray that I was, but I did have my team sergeant saw the images of, and it was one of his friends from back home hanging from a bridge. There's a different level of depravity, but you witnessed it firsthand. And I got to ask you, so when they clubbed you with the body part, did you know at the time that was what it was, or did you process it and see it later in your mind?
No, I think I suspected that that's what it was. And, I can't guarantee 100% that is what it was, but I'm relatively certain that it was. I just remember looking at the guy. I didn't cry out or anything. I just looked at, I probably with, I was incredulous. I just couldn't believe that this could be happening at this point. It's just not something, I guess I grew up watching sort of old school war movies, right? Where people still act like humans, they're not at the level that these people were at that point. And I don't know.
Philosophical right off the bat. So having said all that, those things, like on paper, I see it all, but how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing that you should be remembered as is who are you in the person of Jesus Christ, because that's the only thing that lasts, right? Now, if I die right now, I'm going to be attached. I'm going to have a lasting impact, even in my death, on my wife and my girls. Possibly some of the people in my sphere of influence, possibly some of the guys in the SEAL teams I work with or in business or whatever. I might have a lasting impact, but oftentimes that lasting impact is not so much. It's not so much who you are here physically. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I really believe it's who you are in the person of Jesus Christ, because they look at it and say, "Man, that guy really was who he believed in." Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so it's and I believe it's in James. He talks about, "I'll show you my faith through my works." That's not a works-based salvation.
Right.
He's not saying that I'm working my way to heaven. I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, and that's going to get me to heaven. No, he's just saying, I have faith and I believe in Jesus, and because of that, you're going to see my fruits. My fruits are going to show that I believe in Jesus. Now, there's another aspect of that without getting too far off on this topic. You hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I let people see who Jesus is through how I live my life," right? That's what, I don't necessarily tell everybody about Jesus, but they get to see who Jesus is through how I live my life. Well, that's not good either, because Paul says, how will they hear if they don't have a preacher to preach? So there's two aspects to that. There's one, what I say, right? Scripture says a freshwater spring doesn't produce salt water. What I say is unbelievably important. But then once I say it, it's my actions that back it up. It's words, then action. And we see that with God. John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word, right? Wasn't in the beginning was the action, was the creation. No, in the beginning was the Word was God, the Word was with God. And then all was made through him and by him and with.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades. Real quick, I got the grades in from John from Huntsville. Then I'll go to the phones. Scott Buttram and Jeff Poor both get an A+ for their equally fantastic performances. JP gets an A+ for his absolutely outstanding performance, which means, again, today's winner is obviously the magnificent Phil Williams. I'm honored by that. Thank you. With a perfect A++ for his amazing monologue and his spot-on comments. Congratulations. John, as always, thank you, sir. Let me go straight to the phones because he's on the road right now. And on the phone, that'd be Jeff Rowe from Indiana. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
How long do you think it'll be before John from Huntsville will start grading you on your CNN performances?
I don't know. I just got the word about literally during the break. I mean, like 2 minutes ago, I got the word that things may be changing on Friday night. I either A, may not be doing it all, or B, going to D.C. to do it. I don't know yet.
We shall see.
That ought to be interesting.
Absolutely. What do you think today, man? I've covered Law and Order in DC. I've covered home fries, and then we had the war on woke plus the Grand Council. What's your pleasure? What do you want to talk about?
Well, the war on woke and everything, you talk about these these museums and everything. I don't care if it's good or bad. They need to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And lay it out there, and actual history, and not this whitewash history where everybody's good or bad or something. And if somebody did something bad, let it be known. And if they did something good, let it be known as well. We should be able to face the truth in this country, because that's what makes us, it makes it real and keeps us from repeating the same things.
I saw where Secretary of Defense Hegseth announced that the Confederate memorial at Arlington Cemetery is being restored and put back in place, because it was actually what was known as the Reconciliation Memorial. It was designed for a healing, and it got taken down during the purge. And so it's history. It's part of it, and they're putting it back in its place.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I mean, it's like I say, if you take all our history away, then we're doomed to repeat it again. And I think the Democrats are trying to repeat it now. It's like, you racist bunch of Republicans, never mind, don't look behind the curtain here and notice that we're all always racist and everything. And we try to tell it somebody else is racist. So.
Well, I think the war on woke, though, is worn out. The thing that I read a minute ago about both liberal, progressive, and conservative academics put together a joint manifesto saying, stop the wokeness. They literally want to go back to what you just said. Just let it be what it is. And let's have free speech again.
Yeah, I mean, you go by people who were there and wrote things down about what was going on at the time, and you take that for the gospel instead of trying to rewrite everything and change everything. So I want to know what actually happened instead of just somebody's utopia that what they thought happened. Just kind of like like the Nixon thing and everything. G. Gordon Liddy, I used to talk to him a lot, and he was one of the plumbers and stuff, and they was going about, how Nixon did all this stuff. Well, actually, they broke into the Whitewater Hotel and everything, was looking for a list because one of the people in there was a madam and had all these names of all these Democrats and everything that were with hookers and stuff. That's what they were looking for.
God. So you used to talk to the G-Man on the radio?
Oh yeah, I used to talk to him all the time.
Wow, that's something. He was great. I love G. Gordon Liddy's show. He was something else. All right, brother, where are you on the road right now?
Just about down here to the Batman building, doing about 5 mile-an-hour traffic.
Oh Lord. Well, at least you're moving northward. That's better than you were the other day. So, all right, man. We're about to hit the music, but appreciate you. Be safe on the road. We'll talk again tomorrow.
You all have a good one.
See you, buddy. Jeff Rowe from Indiana. It's like he's part of the team here. It's like he's part of the fabric of the show.
Daily guest.
He is. I mean, it's very cool how that's worked out.
Maybe we should have Jeff Rowe's call-in segment sponsored every day.
Yeah, to find some trucking company to sponsor it. All right, hey, listen, that's the music playing. That means the preacher got to quit preaching. So I will just tell you this. Do not forget, there are more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.